warm blood steamed on Valyrian steel. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, heir of Aerys II, first sword of House Targaryen, golden and melancholy, stood alone beside the Iron Throne, his harp-calloused fingers still trembling around Dark Sister's ruby-studded hilt. He had meant to strike once. Instead, he had slashed, stabbed, driven the ancient blade down through ribs and madness alike, until the body beneath his boots stopped twitching. All his life Rhaegar had read prophecies, sung of sorrows, dreamed of heroes. None of them had prepared him for the way his father's scream would echo in the hollow space of the throne room, or the way its silence would weigh afterward like stone on his lungs. Ashes clung to the dim hall's high-vaulted beams. Aerys had burned 3 servants that morning, torches to light his paranoia, and the stench of cooked flesh still fouled the air. Yet the Iron Throne, twisting high in jagged shadow, smelled only of cold metal and secrets. The Baratheon host was still days from the city. Jon Connington's defeat in the south had opened the road, but King's Landing's great walls remained ungarrisoned. No one in the Red Keep knew what had happened here except 2 men, Rhaegar himself and Sir Arthur Dayne, bleeding but alive on the steps, white cloak torn where the Mad King's wildfire jar had shattered against it. Rhaegar's voice cracked when he spoke. "Arthur, stand. You swore to guard the king." The sword of the morning pushed upright, silver hair dark with blood. "I did, and I will guard him still, in memory. But first I guard the realm." Arthur's eyes found the corpse. It had to be done. Rhaegar wanted to weep at that, wanted to drop the sword, drag his friend to the sept, pray for forgiveness, but the city had no time for tears. Each heartbeat carried the thunder of Robert's war drums closer. So instead he turned to the throne that had cut his father 1,000 times and spoke in the firm, cool tenor his cortege knew from tourneys and lullabies. "Bring Lord Rossart's keys, open the granaries. Summon Grand Maester Pycelle, Sir Barristan, Lord Commander Hightower." A breath. "And send ravens, to Dragonstone, to Sunspear, to Winterfell." Arthur inclined his head. "And Elia first of all. His wife would fear for their children. Tell her the realm needs a queen now more than ever." Outside the window, the Blackwater lapped gray against stone. Rhaegar wiped his father's drying blood on a crimson banner and mounted the iron dais. Dorne's Sunspear banner was the first to answer. Prince Lewin Martell, Rhaegar's uncle, rode past the Gate of the Gods with a column of spearmen 10 days later, their spears tipped in sunrise copper. The Martells had suspected, long before the realm whispered, that Aerys meant doom for Elia and her babes. Lewin knelt beneath the throne and rose, swearing loyalty not to the crown but to Rhaegar himself. "For my sister, and for my niece and nephew," he said. "For their futures, and for peace." Tywin Lannister came next, golden lions reflecting Brazier's fire as he swept into court, flanked by 500 crimson-mantled guards. He had ridden from Casterly Rock the instant word reached him that King Aerys was dead, but none knew whether he came to back Rhaegar or to break him. In the throne room, the hand who had once ruled in all but name paused beneath the skull of Meraxes and bowed a fraction deeper than courtesy required. Rhaegar, remembering how his father had spurned Tywin's counsel, lifted Dark Sister in salute. "My lord of Casterly Rock," he declared, "the realm bleeds. I would close its wounds." Tywin's pale green eyes measured every syllable. "The lion's share of Westeros longs for calm, your grace. Calm and certainty." He allowed the faintest smile. "I stand ready to supply both." Behind him, Jaime Lannister kept his helm on. Years later, singers would wonder if the Kingslayer had contemplated striking his new king that day, as he had struck the Mad One, but Jaime only watched Rhaegar with wary admiration, gauntleted hands clasped behind his gilded cloak. When the last of Tywin's retainers filed out, Rhaegar turned to Arthur in the anteroom. "I cannot fight Baratheon and Lannister both." "You will not need to," Arthur replied. "If you crown yourself swiftly and treat, many will prefer you to war." "Robert will not," Rhaegar murmured. The vision of the trident, the swirl of blue winter roses caught in Lyanna Stark's tangled hair, drew him into silence. He still felt her absence like frostbite. Yet prophecy whispered that ice and fire must meet. The dragon has 3 heads, the comet had told him. But whose winter would meld with his flame if the wolf girl lay beyond his reach? The coronation occurred at dawn, 13 days after Aerys died. Septons bathed the Iron Throne in oils of myrrh to mask the smell of madness. Ilia, pale but luminous, clasped her children upon the dragonstone-forged steps while bells tolled across the city. Rhaenys giggled at the echoes. Baby Aegon clutched his Uncle Luwin's finger and gurgled. Rhaegar wore his black battle armor, under a velvet mantle the color of extinguished embers. When High Septon Gorman approached with the 7-pointed star, pewter reflecting torchlight, Rhaegar knelt. "In the name of the Father," Gorman intoned, pouring holy oil onto his silver hair. "In the name of the warrior. In the name of the smith, mother, maid, crone, stranger." Oil coursed down Rhaegar's brow, stinging where sweat met old smoke. "Do you swear to defend the innocent, to uphold justice, and to seek peace?" "I swear," Rhaegar said, and his voice carried clear through the sept's high windows where doves wheeled in the sunrise. Thus was Aerys' reign ended and Rhaegar's begun. But outside the city, Robert Baratheon's banners still advanced. When ravens reached Storm's End with news of the Mad King's death, Robert laughed so loudly the stone masons swore the drum tower trembled. "The silver harpist stole my kill," he boomed. "All these years Rhaegar wanted his father's throne as much as I did. He's only quicker with betrayal." Jon Arryn, gentler and older, urged caution. "He may sue for peace." Aerys' madness was the spark of rebellion. If the spark is quenched, the lords might bend the knee. "The Starks will not," Ned Stark said. They sat over a map of the Crown lands. "Not after Lyanna." Grief furrowed Ned's brow like the plow prints of winter. "We march." So Robert's host of Stormlanders and Northmen struck through the rain-lashed King's Road, clattering beneath banners of stags and deerwolves. At Felwood they splintered a loyalist vanguard. At Sow's Horn they bested Connington's final levy. Each league closer to King's Landing fanned Robert's fury. He spoke often of Rhaegar's cloak fluttering around Lyanna in the tourney at Harrenhal, of the crown of winter roses laid into her lap. Lyanna's death wound was an emptiness in them both. Ned wore it like silence, Robert like fire. Word of Robert's advance reached King's Landing as spring storms broke over Blackwater Bay. Rhaegar convened a great council in Maegor's Holdfast. Warriors, maesters, merchant princes. They filled the Candlesmoke Hall until whispers became a tide. "I would meet Lord Baratheon's host on the field," Rhaegar announced. "But I would meet him first across a table." Tywin's jaw tightened. "Parley is weakness." "It is wisdom," Luwin countered. "The realm cannot bear another field of corpses." Rhaegar raised his hand. "We will offer honorable peace," titles confirmed, taxes reduced, seats on my council for Stark and Arryn, and justice. True justice, for Lyanna Stark's fate. His throat tightened. He forced the next words. "I will reveal that she died at the Tower of Joy, under my protection, of a fever after childbirth." Elias' head jerked. Rhaegar felt her stare like a dagger but continued. "The child, should it live, I will send north to be fostered." Silence fell thick as tomb dust. Then Pycelle stepped forward, beard trembling. "A gracious offer, your grace, but dangerous. Many will whisper you seduced the girl." "Then son." "I loved her," Rhaegar said, and Elia flinched, though she did not look away. "If love is my crime, let me answer for it." That night Elia came to his solar. Moonlight silvered her hollow cheeks. "Is it true? Did she bear your child?" "Yes." Rhaegar could not lie. "I named him Aemon, for the Dragon Knight. The babe is strong." He had felt prophecy move beneath his palms when he lifted the squalling boy from Lyanna's fevered arms. Ice and fire. Elias' next breath rattled. "And what of me? Of our children?" "Nothing changes," he whispered. "Nothing." He wanted to promise sons and songs, but the look in her darkling eyes forbade illusion. Still, she nodded. "For the realm, then," she said, and left him staring into the candle that flickered between them like a dying star. Robert agreed to a parley at the Inn of the Kneeling Man, where monarchs of old had surrendered to Andal's iron. Rhaegar rode out with Arthur Dayne, Barristan Selmy, and a single banner of the three-headed dragon. Across a shallow ford, Robert waited beside Ned and Jon Arryn, rain shining on his black hair. The air smelled of wet pine and tension. Robert spoke first, voice rolling like thunder. "You wore my betrothed's favor at Harrenhal and stole her from me. Now you steal my rebellion." "The realm was my charge before any love or war," Rhaegar replied. "I did not steal it. I saved it." "You killed your father," Robert growled. "I slew a tyrant." Rhaegar's eyes never left Robert's. "Join me, Lord of Storm's End. Together we heal Westeros. I will name you hand, give lands for your valor, and wed you to—" "To whom?" "Another Stark sister, you fancy." Robert spat into the mud. "I will have your head, Silver Prince, and place it beside the one you took from me." The words left no room. Arthur's hand twitched toward Dawn. Ned's gray gaze flicked to Barristan. Old friends now on opposite ranks. Jon Arryn raised a palm. "There is still a chord to reach. The Mad King is dead," Rhaegar offers. "Nothing that matters," Robert said. "I will not kneel to the blood of Lyanna's kidnapper." He turned his stallion. "We fight." Rhaegar watched him ride off, and felt prophecy shift like plates beneath the earth. The trident awaited. Elia stood on the Red Keep's balcony holding baby Aegon, when the first raven returned. The bird's leg bore ribbons of Baratheon gold and stark gray. She broke the seal with shaking fingers. Behind her, Princess Rhaenys tugged at her skirts, asking when Papa would come home. On the river Trident under a sky, streaked sunset crimson, the two armies had met. Brynden Tully's scouts claimed the river itself turned the color of garnets. Robert Baratheon slew Rhaegar Targaryen beneath the arch of a shattered wheelhouse, his warhammer crushing rubies from breastplate to mud. The tide of battle surged round them, but when Robert lifted his hammer a second time, the Dragon Prince did not rise. Elia read the raven's words until letters blurred. Then she drew her children near, feeling the chill wind of change sweep the balcony. The game was not ended, only its board overturned. Rhaegar's corpse lay in a tent of scarlet canvas on the riverbank. Ned Stark knelt beside it while Robert greeted cheering men. The rain that had dogged the march was gone. Sparks of dusk lingered in pools around discarded shields. Ned reached to shut Rhaegar's eyes, surprised to find them open still, fixed on something distant. A harpist's call. A woman's whisper. Ned did not know. He saw only tragedy. One more life broken by destiny's wheel. Jon Arryn entered softly. Robert would burn the body. He says dragons must be ash. Ned's jaw clenched. It is not gods who decide such things. It is men. He lifted a fragment of Rhaegar's cracked breastplate, the inlay of a single deep blue rose, still intact amid crushed rubies. Lyanna's rose. The tent flap burst wide. Robert strode in, boots splashing. "Ned, it's done. The usurper is dead, and the realm is ours." His gaze found Rhaegar's still face. "He took my woman. I took his life." Ned stood, slow as winter dawn. "This war began for justice. Let it end with mercy. Send the prince home to Dragonstone for burial." Robert's nostrils flared. "Dragons belong to pyres." "Then? So do we all," Ned said. "Fire or earth, what matters is honor. Lyanna would have wanted." "Do not speak her name now," Robert thundered. Yet grief flickered behind the rage. He bowed his head a heartbeat, then jerked it upright. "Very well. Wrap him in his purple silks and send him south. But I will see the throne taken before the moon turns." "Nay." When Robert exited, Jon Arryn exhaled. "He's a good man, Ned. Just wounded." "Wounded men still bleed the innocent," Ned replied. He wondered how many innocents lay ahead between the Trident and the Iron Throne. King's Landing braced for siege. Tywin Lannister, despite his oaths, closed the city gates against Rhaegar's returning captains and set his massive host on the Gold Road. Lords Hightower and Fell, commanding what remained of the royal army, debated whether to hold or sally. But the choice ended when raven smoke spiraled over Flea Bottom. Tywin's men were already inside. They'd been welcomed as allies, then turned on the city like lions on sheep. Grand Maester Pycelle opened the gates, and the sack began. Ilya locked herself in Rhaegar's holdfast with Sir Jaime Lannister, still a king's guard despite no king to guard. Jaime paced the hall like a caged cat. "My father will not harm you," he insisted. "He wants the realm's praise." Ilya stared at him, dark eyes hollow. "He will want to prove loyalty to the new king. I am the old king's widow." She held baby Aegon tight, Rhaenys clutching her skirt. "Swear on your sword, sir, that my children live." Jaime opened his mouth. Then the door burst with a crash of iron. Sir Emery Lorch stepped through, followed by Gregor Clegane, armored like doom. Jaime's hand found his sword but froze. Clegane's helm turned, black and gigantic. "Orders from Lord Tywin," he rumbled. "No Targaryen lives." Some say Jaime hesitated. Others say Ilya screamed. The truth, written later by septiquils, was that Princess Rhaenys perished beneath the mountain sword, and Aegon's blood spattered the nursery. Ilya died last, pleading in Dorne's lilting tongue. Skull dashed against the wall. Jaime walked from the room with dawn-bright tears streaking his cheeks, oath shattering like glass. When Robert arrived 2 days later, Tywin met him beneath the Red Keep's scorched gatehouse, offering a crimson banner sewn with severed dragon wings. Gregor laid Rhaegar's children's tiny bodies before the king. Robert stared a long time. At last he nodded, once. "They are Targaryen." He did not raise his hammer. But Ned Stark saw the glaze of horror under Robert's eyes, and swore he heard the sound of wolves howling in the blood-slick streets. On Dragonstone, storms raged. Viserys Targaryen, pale with fever, clutched his swaddled newborn sister Daenerys, while Sir Willem Darry argued with Lady Ashara Dane about ships. News of King's Landing reached them on foam-spattered wings. Rhaegar dead, Ilya slain, the crown taken by Robert. Ashara, her violet eyes rimmed with tears, insisted they flee east. Willem agreed. In a midnight gale they set sail, carrying the last dragon embers across the narrow sea. At the Red Keep's high sept, Robert was crowned amid half-ruined tapestries and half-empty pews. Jon Arryn became Hand, Stannis master of ships, Renly a page in the court's new pageantry. Ned Stark took the bones of his sister from the crypt beneath the corridor where she had sickened and rode north. Heart frozen around the promise he could never keep, that he would bring her home alive. Yet even amid coronation revelry, whispers curled. Some said a third child of Rhaegar, and Lyanna had survived his mother's fever, spirited away by the night of the morning. Others recalled dragon eggs, rumored to lie under the Dothraki Sea. Prophecy has a long memory, and cinders can hide a spark. Years later, in the shadowed vaults of Winterfell, Ned Stark sometimes heard the distant wail of a babe who should have been king. He would rise in darkness, closing his eyes against the memory of rubies on river mud, and he would walk the crypts beneath the earth, until dawn touched the statues' faces with gray-gold light. And on wind-torn Dragonstone, Jon Connington, banished but unbroken, knelt before a hidden boy with purple-black hair and solemn eyes. "Your father's dream lives, Aegon," he swore. "The world will remember the rightful king." In Braavos, Lyanna's son, orphaned twice by destiny, stared across the narrow sea toward a homeland he did not know, while far away, 3 dragons stirred within stone shells under a silver star. The Game of Thrones never ends. It only sheds skins. Wind howled across the snow-clad roofs of Winterfell as Eddard Stark dismounted in the yard, Lyanna's bones cradled in a box of polished weirwood no larger than a child's cradle. The riding party he had led from the south, ragged survivors of a war too brief to ennoble, slid from saddles in weary silence. Gray wind kept kissing the battlements and spinning into unseen stars. Ned felt each gust pass clean through him, as though the ghost of his sister were the wind's own daughter, already roaming the godswood in restless curiosity. Maester Luwin hurried down the steps with torches, thrashing orange. Between them came Catelyn, shawl hastily knotted beneath her throat, auburn hair loose from sleep. She reached Ned, took one look at the polished box, and stopped. Her face folded, not in jealousy. She had been told whose remains these were, but in sorrow for her husband's grief and unquiet honor. "Bring her below," Ned murmured. He carried the casket himself, boots scuffing damp stone. Robb and little Sansa peered from the topmost landing, and baby Arya squirmed in old Nan's arms, trying to catch a torch's flame between chubby fingers. None of his children would remember Lyanna as she had been, wild, laughing, fierce as a fieldhawk. Perhaps that was mercy. Memory, he had learned, was as heavy a chain as duty. They interred her before dawn, the moon waning into an enamel sliver that looked ready to snap. Ned set the box at the feet of Brandon Stark's statue, son and daughter sleeping at the heels of wolves dead centuries, and knelt until the chill of stone seeped through wool and bone. When he rose at last, his knees ticked like rusted hinges. Catelyn guided him away. Her hand was small and warm. He wondered if the South had softened him, or if grief simply hollowed warmth from within. He almost told her everything then. The tower, the blood-soaked bed, the way Lyanna's fingers had clutched his sleeve, and how her voice, brittle as frost on leaves, had made him swear 5 vows in the same breath, chief among them to shield the newborn suckling at her breast. But he did not. Promises, once spoken aloud, grew fragile. Secrets exposed to light could shatter safer than glass. He ordered fresh rushes laid out in the hall, and lingered by the window until sunrise pooled molten gold across the courtyard. Somewhere down below, Jon Snow, the dark-haired infant he had carried north swaddled in a silent vow, bobbled in a wet nurse's arms. In King's Landing, a different dawn found Robert Baratheon sprawled on the high bed in Maegor's holdfast. He reeked of wine and spilled boar stew. A bare-breasted girl traced lazy circles on the down of his chest. Stannis stood at the door glowering like a starving mastiff. "We have letters," Stannis said, every syllable iron flat. "The Iron Islands stir. Balon Greyjoy styles himself Lord Paramount, unsworn Dahl. He demands a fleet to patrol against raiders he claims we provoke." "New Estelle." Robert waved a hand. "Give him a fleet, or burn his ships. His choice." Stannis' mouth tightened. A king cannot send fleets he does not have. Jon Arryn's tariffs barely keep the food wagons rolling. The butcher's boys find bones in their supper. Robert sat, swinging legs over the mattress. "We won a war, brother. The realm has larders enough in Old Town and Lannisport to feed 10 winters. Tywin will pay if coin is wanted." "And if he will not?" Stannis asked. Robert scowled. "Then I will wring it from him. The lion always coughs up gold when his mane is tugged." "Meporti?" He dressed without dismissing the girl, who blinked in confusion before scurrying out barefoot. Robert followed his brother down corridors still charred from the sack, silk tapestries draped to hide scorch marks. Each turn reeked of tallow and cedar smoke, but undertones of battle lingered: tar, dried blood, piss. King's Landing had been bruised, not healed. In the small council chamber, Tywin Lannister leaned at ease beside Grandmaster Pycelle, one hand resting on a cane tipped with a discreet lion's head. His eyes flicked to Robert, then to Stannis, measuring. "My king," Tywin said, voice smooth as oiled copper. "We must speak of succession." "Already?" Robert laughed. "I've not warmed the throne seat." "Precisely why haste benefits you," Tywin replied. "A ruler who dies without an heir invites civil war. And you have no wife." Robert poured wine from a flagon. "Plenty of women in the city. None who secure alliances," Tywin said. "House Lannister offers Princess Cersei." Stannis' jaw bulged. Too soon. Too convenient. Robert, though, considered. Cersei's beauty was sung from the Westerlands to the Arbor, a legend of gold curls and emerald eyes. He had never danced with her, but rumor claimed she mirrored Jaime's splendor in softer form. And she was Lannister, a house rich enough to pave the realm's roads in gold. "Done," Robert said. He drank. The matter ended there, as simple as stamping a sigil on wax. Stannis' disappointment tasted thicker than the wine. Robert ignored it. In a vine-covered manse across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen awoke to rain tapping cracked shutters. She was barely 4, Yet dreams already filled her nights with dragons. Massive wings darkening orange skies, scales glimmering like rubies and deep-water pearls. She told Viserys once, and he slapped her for superstition. Today she found him seated with two fat men wearing silks that gleamed oily in the lamplight. One introduced himself as Illyrio Mopatis, a magister of Pentos. He kissed her cheek and left a spice smell on her skin. A marriage pact, Viserys whispered, when Illyrio stepped out to sample wine. Khal Drogo, a horse lord who commands 10,000 riders. He will give me an army to reclaim Westeros. Naaman. Daenerys' stomach nodded. She had never seen a Khalasar, only heard their camps look like seas of fire across the plains. I am too small, she said. Viserys' fingers dug into her shoulder. You will grow. You will be their queen. That night, Daenerys crept to the roof where wind drummed on blue tiles. A brazier smoldered. Coals flared each time rain hissed across them. She stared east, where the night bled into a violet haze over the Rhoynar. She imagined the continent beyond, Qarth's jade towers, the red waste, ancient Ashai. Somewhere even farther, 3 dragons slept inside eggs, the color of storms. She did not know how she knew. She only felt certainty root inside her ribs like a living tear. Jon Connington huddled inside a stable outside Mere, hay bristling through his cloak. Across a rough plank table Aegon, 6 now, solemn as a small priest, repeated the names of the kings of old Valyria. Each correct answer earned him a sip of watered wine. The boy's face gleamed with pride when he reached the final arithmar. Jon closed the book. Not perfect, Connington said, but you improve. Good kings learn faster than good soldiers. Lightning forked beyond the shutters. Tomorrow we ride to the Golden Company. Aegon's dark eyes widened. Sel's words. Exiles. Connington touched the boy's cheek. Knights who lost homes to your grandfather's madness or Robert's rebellion. They follow gold, yes, but also dreams of returning. They will not see a sellsword in you. They will see a sunrise. Sometime after midnight, thunder cracking like siege stones, Connington stepped outside, drew a dagger, and sliced a strand of his own hair. Years of hiding had salted copper into silver, but under torchlight the cut looked black. He cast it into a puddle and watched water swirl round the tiny line. He imagined each hair a friend lost at the bells, at the trident, at Stony Sept. Too many ghosts marched in his shadow. He prayed they might serve Aegon better than they had served him. South of the neck, Sir Arthur Dayne, alive in rumor if not in court, rode alone through the Kingswood. Dawn's blade lay sheathed in winter-dull leather. His cloak was mottled gray, once lavender bright. He carried a bundle across his saddle, a babe swaddled in silent linen. The child's skin glowed with milk-soft pallor, the dust of a star hewn to flesh. In the daylight he could not look too long at the boy's eyes. They mirrored his dead prince's, colored like rare amethysts found only in the told pits of Lys. Arthur's path wound toward Storm's End, not Winterfell. He intended to find Howland Reed first, but word reached him of Eddard Stark's swift departure north and the wedding of Robert Baratheon to Cersei Lannister. Secrets, Arthur knew, belonged stitched between those two names. Robert and Eddard, as tight as a surgeon's thread. If Stark guarded Rhaegar's second son, so much the better. Yet Arthur had no proof Ned lived. Ravens said he vanished into snows. And the babe, Aemon, Lyanna's dying breath had called him, could not tarry in open fields. So Arthur angled south. Dorne's deserts would hide a dragon's flame better than northern ice. The Kingswood crackled with summer heat. Sunshafts pierced the leaves, making emerald kaleidoscopes across his helm. Once, he had hunted boar here with Rhaegar, laughing at the way the prince plucked melodies from a silver-stringed harp, even as hounds bayed for blood. Now he listened only for pursuit. Rumor of a white knight bearing a dragon whelp would fetch gold in any inn. He trusted his speed, but not fate. Fate, he knew intimately, had teeth sharper than Dawn's. He slept no more than he rode. When his eyes blurred from weariness, he pictured Elias' murdered children and commanded sleep to flee. He was the sword of the morning still, though unmoored from nights so long they seemed dawnless. A single duty remained: keep this child alive, whatever the realm decided he was worth. 7 days later he crossed the Will River under a sky bruised purple. At a weeping willow he dismounted, cup-palmed water to the babe's lips, and spoke aloud the words he had rehearsed in memory's echo. "You will have no songs written yet, little one, but songs cannot save a kingdom. Men can." The baby gurgled. Arthur smiled. Small, ragged, but true. In the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister's wedding gown weighed as much as her brother's armor. Gold bracelets dented her wrists. A woven belt of lion heads cinched white silk so tightly she could barely draw breath. Robert, flushed from the Sept's incense, smelled of roses and roast pig. When Sept and Eustace pronounced them man and wife, Robert crushed her lips with ale-sour enthusiasm. Cersei's lips shaped a smile, but ice slithered under her skin. She had imagined triumph tasting sweet. All she felt was the bite of new chains, thicker than the ones her father fitted around her wrists every time she disobeyed. That night Robert fell asleep mid-copulation, snoring between her thighs. Cersei slid out, bathed, donned a robe fringed with Lannister crimson, and padded to the balcony. The city lay black below, torches sparkling along the river's inky coil. She remembered Rhaegar in the dragon pit, fingers coaxing secret chords from a harp. She'd been 13, smitten, sure he would choose her at the tourney. He had not. Now Robert, twice her age, wore a crown that sat askew whenever he stooped for goblets. She closed her eyes and made a wish. Somewhere in the dark of the world, she prayed, dragons yet lived. If she could not ride one, she would birth one, a son with a lion's roar and fire in his veins. Across the sea, Daenerys stood barefoot atop a marble stair, watching Illyria's servants carry chests full of silver rings and sable pelts toward her future husband's camp. She touched the stones beneath her feet, felt them warm and real, and forced herself to breathe. Each inhalation whispered a single word. Dracarys, thought. She did not know what it meant. It came on the wind, in the chime of distant bells, in the hiss of metal plunging into water. One day, perhaps he would speak it loud. In the halls of Sunspear, Princess Arianne Martell read the latest Raven from King's Landing and ripped it in half. Her uncle Lewin's bones, returned by Robert as a courtesy, rested beneath a cedar casket near the water gardens. Not far stood the white marble tomb of Elia Martell and her slaughtered children. Arianne sat between them every sunset, letting wave sounds wash over her. The sand smelled faintly of blood even years later. She told no one, but each night when she left the tomb she kissed 2 fingers and pressed them to Rhaenys' engraved face, the only part of the statue unscarred by time. Her father, Prince Doran, watched her through lattice screens patterned like honeycomb. His gout-swollen ankles throbbed, but anger burned hotter than pain. Dorne had bent knee to Robert, yet songs traveling the green blood told a different tale. Tywin's lions had killed the children. Robert's stag had nodded assent. Doran's uncle Oberyn, restless as a striking asp, demanded vengeance. Quiet Doran waited, always waited. Arianne wanted to shake him until words fell loose. But she understood the game well enough. You did not take vengeance by shouting. You took it by letting the enemy forget you had teeth at all. Jon Arryn's quill scratched across parchment in his solar at King's Landing. He had begun a ledger of names, men who aided Tywin in the sack, knights who protected Targaryen women, merchants who profited from wildfire stores. Each name he inked in red or black. Red meant justice delayed, black meant pardoned, either for lack of proof or because the realm needed their grain ships more than it needed their heads. One name he did not write: Jaime Lannister. The Kingslayer's guilt was drowned beneath Robert's gratitude, but guilt, Jon knew, was seldom buried forever. If Robert lived long and drank deeper, Jaime might slip free. But if Robert died young, regents with long memories would weigh that fortune in blood. Jon's real labor, though, lay in another scroll hidden beneath his mattress, a trail of coins sent from Highgarden to the free cities, smuggled into Sellsword vaults. The Tyrells had not fought Robert openly. Now, it seemed, they funded someone else's fight. Jon would need to know whom. Near the arbor, a red-hulled cog named Laughing Fisherman rode a tide toward the summer sea. A deckhand named Saladhor San lounged by the rail, stringing pearls into a thin wire. The captain approached. "Pearls fetch less than gold," the captain chided. "Gold buys swords," Saladhor said. "Pearls buy secrets." The captain laughed. "Secrets sink ships faster than storms," Saladhor smiled. "Or float them to thrones." He glanced at the horizon, where gulls wheeled above unseen shoals. Somewhere across leagues of water, men whispered of dragons stirring. If dragons existed, sailors would talk. Saladhor collected talk the way other men collected coins. On Dragonstone, newborn Daenerys' cries echoed down black halls of basalt. But Daenerys was gone. This babe was different. Hush now. No, wrong timeline. Yes. On Dragonstone, Viserys rocked Daenerys through coughing fits that rattled her tiny ribs. The old knight Willem Darry dampened cloths in seawater, cooing lullabies of old Valyria. He had smuggled a chest of 3 stone eggs from the vaults beneath the Red Keep on the night he fled, but he showed them only rarely, when storms roared so loudly the children trembled in terror. "Remember," he would say, "that dragons once lit seas like candles." One such night Viserys demanded to hold an egg, heavy and smooth, black as coal and veined in scarlet threads. The egg radiated warmth, or maybe his palms only imagined it. He vowed then that when he broke their shells, he would break Robert's holdfast too. Daenerys, fussy, reached out with tiny fingers. Viserys drew the egg away. "You shall have a dragon," he promised her, "when I have my iron chair." Years churned. In the 12th year of Robert's reign, storms scoured the narrow sea so fiercely sailors spoke of krakens mating. In the same season, a fever struck the maw of the free cities, blackening tongues and blistering lungs. At Terash and Lys they burned corpses day and night, smoke so thick the moon vanished. In Myr, Aegon fell ill. Connington feared plague, but the Golden Company's sergeants coaxed him. Find a healer in Volantis famed for quelling riverpox. They packed the boy in silk and rode south along the Rhoyne's glittering coil, torches winking like red wasps among the reeds. In Volantis, under the Bridge of Elephants, a red priestess with hair the color of new-forged rust pressed a jeweled hand against Aegon's brow. "This one will not die," she declared. Rhoar's flames dance in his veins. But another, far cold, reaches for him. When ice meets fire, the world shall tremble. Guard your Prince Griffin. And Connington shuddered. He had told no one his personal sigil, red griffin on silver. The priestess smiled as if she tasted his dread. She asked no gold, only a promise that, when the dragons flew again, he would remember the Lord of Light. Connington nodded, though faith felt foreign. He served flesh and blood. In Winterfell, Jon Snow, 8 now, ran the yard with Robb, wooden swords clacking. Ned watched from the steps. Jon lunged, eyes sparkling like frosted glass. He moved quick as a shadow cat. Behind those eyes Ned sometimes glimpsed the specter of Lyanna. The same fierce hunger, the same wild need to prove worth amid lords' sons and daughters who never doubted their name. He wondered what else might wake in the boy. Dragon dreams? Visions of rubies falling on gray water? If they did, Ned prayed the gods would cloak him in mundane haze. Summer soon, the days lengthened. Ravens ferried word that King Robert planned a progress north. Cersei traveled with him, as did the twins Joffrey and Myrcella, and an eldest son born the year after their marriage. Gawain they called him, though rumor whispered Jaime Lannister's laughter. The day of his birth sounded too proud for an uncle. Ned stiffened. He had no taste for pomp. Worse, visits from kings cracked walls secrets hid behind. He wrote Robert politely, urging the court to linger at White Harbor where docks and feasts could ease royal burdens. Robert penned a reply, sloppy letters stained with ale, insisting Ned's face was missed more than honeyed hams. Dire news, Robert hinted. Jon Arryn coughed blood, bones like reed stalks. The hand's sickness shrank him by the hour. Catelyn found her husband staring at the parchment. "If the king comes," she said, "let us greet him proudly. Our halls can hide bastards as well as any cellar." Ned winced. He had confessed to Catelyn only that Jon's mother was a girl called Willa. The lie never sat comfortably in his mouth. It weighed heavier each year. Yet telling truths might kill more than his honor. It could kill the boy. And surely Robert's love for Lyanna still glowed hot enough to burn any living memory of Rhaegar from the earth. Better Robert know nothing, Ned told himself, than bleed the realm anew. John Arryn died 2 fortnights later. King's Landing rang bells for 3 days, though half the city could not remember why. Stannis wrote Ned that foul play was likely. Arryn had been investigating royal lineage, visiting blacksmiths, sifted ledger scraps. The letter ended abruptly, words smudged as if quill snapped in anger. The seed is strong. When Robert read Arryn's last bequests, he roared, "I shall bury him in the vale, then hunt boar in Winterfell and mourn with ale." His courtiers chorused approval, none louder than Jaime Lannister, slouching against a pillar, polished grin tight as a helm strap. God. Cersei watched from the dais. She had tried to catch Robert's eye earlier to propose postponement. War rumbled on the Iron Islands now, Balon Greyjoy styling himself king at Pike, but Robert would not delay the north, as if some invisible chain hauled him there. Perhaps he sensed a knot only Lyanna's weeping statue could untie. Cersei tasted jealousy and spat it out in smiles. At Pike, Balon Greyjoy nailed driftwood crowns to the prow of his flagship and named his sons captains of the Iron Fleet. "Barbarians in green lands forget the old way," he told them. "We will remind them from Talhart's coast to Cape Kraken." His daughter Asha laughed aloud. A bright clash in a hall of barnacled iron, and swore to bring back a Stark's head as dowry. She had all the sea trapped inside her grin. Balon believed she might. Yet just as sails unfurled, word reached Pike that King Robert's fleet, patched with red wine ships and Lannisport galleys, set course west. Balon balked. Duck. Storms could break fleets, kings more so. He ordered half his longships to anchor, the other half to raid lightly and vanish. But an Ironborn cannot nibble a mainland's flank without swallowing seawater. This war, Balon sensed, would not be a quick feast. In Sunspear, Oberyn Martell lounged in a courtyard where pomegranate blossoms bled onto white tile. He held a letter from Myr, Aegon Targaryen alive, grown, gathering swords. A smile curled his lips. "Vengeance wears many faces," he murmured. He looked up at Doran perched on a cushioned seat. "If the dragon stirs, shall we breathe fire?" Doran closed his eyes against sunlight. "Not yet. Fire uncontrolled burns ally and foe alike." But inside, a pulse quickened, matching the slow beat of gout-swollen ankles. Patience, he reminded himself. Patience feeds justice, with the marrow of certainty. Arthur Dayne reached Lemonwood at dusk. The port stank of citrus rinds and brine. Gulls screeched over hulls blistered by salt. He booked passage for himself, and infant Aemon aboard a cog bound for Norvos, paying extra coin for a private berth. The captain eyed the child, violet eyes bright even and dim, and muttered a wordless prayer. Arthur tipped him another dragon, gold-hushed piety fast. At night, he rocked the boy against the gentle tilting of the deck. Aemon's fingers closed around Dawn's hilt when Arthur laid the blade beside them. The sword's pale light danced in candle glow. Arthur felt tears sting his own eyes. First he had shed since Rhaegar fell. Dawn belonged to House Dayne, forged from a falling star, so legend said. But in this small cabin, Arthur wondered if the star had fallen not to arm a knight, but to guide a king. A week out to sea, storms chased them, but the cog rode swells like a gull. Aemon did not cry. He watched lightning flicker across clouds, entranced. Arthur whispered old stories. Azer Ahai, Nymeria's 1,000 ships, the forging of storm's end, until waves and words wove lullabies. When land finally rose, gray towers of Norvos etched against dawn, Arthur felt destiny pivot on the quill of possibility. If he could reach the Golden Company before Connington sailed, Aemon's claim might merge with Aegon's, 2 sons of the dragon, forging a united flame. If not, he would hide the boy in the shadow of Norvoshi bells, raise him to wisdom before war. He carried the child onto a quay, slick with algae. Dockhand spoke low Valyrian. A priest in shaggy gray came to collect tithe. Arthur gave none. The priest raised a brow at dawn. Then his eyes slid to deeper silence. They let him pass. In the black cellars beneath the Red Keep, Varys the Spider listened to a barrel-chested sellsword confess to slaying a baker in Flea Bottom. Above them, the Red Keep groaned. Every secret, Varys mused, weighed more than the stones themselves. And yet they never cracked, only shifted, adjusting to new burdens. He dismissed the man to the headsman and wrote 2 short letters. One flew south to Sunspear, the other north to Winterfell, addressed not to Eddard Stark, but to Maester Luwin under cipher. The letters spoke of dragon whispers, Dornish unrest, and a shadow in the east that flickered crimson in temple fires. He advised caution. He always did. Winterfell's ravens arrived on a morning laced with crisp bite. Ned read Varys's coded missive, frowned, then called for more quills. He drafted a response, measured and vague, speaking of harvests and gray winds. Secrets for secrets. And even trade he neither trusted nor refused. On the King's Road far south, Robert's progress rolled like a slow leviathan. Knights, banners, mummers, hunting hounds, wagons loaded with barrels of Dornish red. Jaime rode near the front, in ornate plate. Cersei rode the gilded wheelhouse at Robert's right flank. Children crouched on velvet benches. She studied each village they passed, noticing how peasants bowed to the stag but straightened eyes hungry the moment gold lions glimmered. Allegiance, she knew, could hang by a single coin. When they camped outside Hayford, a messenger from Stannis arrived. Lord Renly, now Master of Laws, intercepted the man. But Cersei overheard enough. Stannis sailed west to crush Greyjoy longships near the Arbor. He urged the king's return south. Robert snarled and tore the parchment. Stannis can fight krakens, he barked. I'll fight nightmares. He spurred his charger north, leaving Renly blinking. As the royal column neared Moat Cailin, Ned rode south to meet them. He found Robert seated beside a cookfire, tearing pheasant with bare hands, grease dripping through his beard. The king leapt up, crushed Ned in an embrace that smelled of smoke and sweetgrass. Behind them, Cersei dismounted, cloak ripple shifting over her shoulders. She eyed Ned with polite disdain. Ned bowed. That night, they feasted in a pavilion, strung with antler-shaped chandeliers. Robert drank until candlelight blurred to halos. He spoke of Aaron's death, tears glittering. The realm has no true friends left, Ned. Only you. He fixed Ned with bleary eyes. Come south. Be my hand. Ned's heart seized. Winterfell needed him. Catelyn carried another child. Joan's future wove delicate threads through each hall. Yet Robert's plea was a weight forged of history and blood. He opened his mouth to refuse, then glimpsed Cersei watching, green eyes narrow. If he left Robert to that gaze alone, what poisons might it pour? He drank deep from his own cup and sighed. I will serve your grace, for our father's sake and for Lyanna's memory. Cersei's smile was thin as parchment. Queens seldom welcomed old friends of their kings. She rose, gathered her children, and left the tent. Ned turned back, but Robert had already slumped against a cushion, snoring. Wine gurgled in the cup, still tilted at his lips. Later, as stars walked silver above dark marshes, Ned paced outside camp. Wolves howled distant confluence with the rumble of ways at White Knife Mouth. What had he done? If he died in King's Landing, if plots there unraveled secrets, John Catelyn, the North, he pressed fingers to his temple. Winter was coming. He felt it in his bones, though summer still breathed warm. Inside his tent, Littlefinger's litter awaited, feather cloak dusted from travel. Pettier Baelish smiled like a cat at cream. Lord Stark, welcome to the game, he purred. The pieces you'll need are already moving. I do not play games, Ned said. Littlefinger's grin widened. Everyone plays, my lord. Some simply prefer not to know the stakes. Far across the sea, in the city of Bravos, an acolyte of the faceless men lit a single black candle. Shadows danced on walls, carved with faces of stone and salt. The acolyte whispered a name. One whispered now in taverns, whorehouses, and the hulls of ships from old Volantis to Qohor, young Griff. Another candle flickered, whispering a second name. Snow. The god of many faces listened, and the acolyte listened in turn, and the faces whispered back. Atop the wall, a man named Benjen Stark wrapped a cloak tighter against the rime. Aurora danced green and pink along the horizon. Ravens croaked restlessly in cages. Benjen thought of letters from Winterfell. Robb growing tall, Bran learning to climb towers, Jon strong as any trueborn. He wondered if he might see them again before snow buried the King's Road until summer. He wondered too about the rumors Jon's eyes stirred in his heart. The rarest Targaryen violet. He had told no one. Secrets nested best in silence. Beyond the wall, shapes moved. White, silent, inexorable. One lifted a shard-bright sword. The ice did not melt at its touch. Years earlier, on the banks of the Trident, rubies had fallen like blood into water. They still lay under silt, glinting when moonlight struck the current just so. Travelers said, fish grew large where stones glimmered. Others said the river sang at night, the long sorrowing note of a harp seeking broken strings. No one dove for the rubies. Treasures lost to war often brought ghosts ashore. In a cabin of a trading galley, Daenerys, now 13, held a jade figurine given by Illyrio. She traced the curve of its wings, smelling salt and distant cloves. Khal Drogo awaited her in V's Dothrak dot. No. She whispered the word again. Dracarys, and the jade felt warm. Behind her, 3 eggs nestled in a basket of twigs, green as sage leaves after rain, cream flecked with gold, and obsidian black veined with red. She pressed her palm to the black one. In the pit of her belly, something fluttered. Not fear, not quite hope. A breath of fire yet unborn. At Norvos Harbor, Arthur Dayne met a man with cat-slit eyes who called himself Bitter Steel's heir. The Golden Company would sail west in half a year, he said. Gather every drop of dragon's blood you can. Arthur touched the hilt of dawn. I have one heir. He looked down at Aemon's curious face. He will suffice. The man smiled. The company follows gold. Arthur unbuckled a purse heavy with stags and dragons, poured its coins into the man's hands. Then follow this, and guard your loyalties. In King's Landing, Varys moved 2 figurines on his silk board, 1 stag, 1 lion. He set a dragon at the edge. Balance, he whispered. Too little fire in winter will freeze us dull. Too much and we burn. He wondered if Rhaegar in his darkest songs had foreseen this board. Perhaps only the dead, he reflected, knew how the game truly ended. And somewhere in the crypts of Winterfell, Jon Snow, sleepless from the bustle of royal arrival, wandered among stone kings. He paused before Lyanna's statue, lily clasped in stone fingers. He sensed a hush. A pause in the deep turning gears of night. His candle flickered. Shadows crawled. Jon reached out and brushed dust from Lyanna's cheek. I'll protect them, he whispered, though he did not know whom he meant, Robb and Bran, Arya, Sansa, or someone else entirely. The cavern air smelled faintly of roses long decayed. Jon blew out the flame. Darkness gathered. Above, the first flakes of an unseasonable snow drifted past Winterfell's tower tops, melting when they met warm stone. But they came nonetheless, heralds of something older than kings and queens, older than dragons, older perhaps than the wheel of conquest itself. In their glimmer fate wove strands tighter, pulling wolves and lions, stags and krakens, sun spears and griffins toward a single storm. Some saw it forming and braced steel. Others sang lullabies or whispered prayers. Most slept unaware as ever. Only the wind seemed to know, and it whispered through every broken tower and every wide plain the same word again and again. Dragon. Benjen Stark rode down the King's Road 2 days ahead of the royal party, his black cloak snapping behind him like a raven's wing. He had promised Tyrion Lannister a place at the wall, but the dwarf lagged in his litter somewhere between the green fork and the neck, too curious about every roadside alehouse to keep pace. Benjen cared little. He wished only to put leagues between himself and the Queen's green eyes. She and Jaime had spoken in brittle whispers the night the king feasted at Crossed Elk, and he had caught a single hissed phrase, "You swore no more," before a door slammed. A moment later, he heard steel ringing softly, as if someone tested the edge of a dagger on stone. His ranger's instinct prickled. Lice smelled the same whether they drifted through dark pines or velvet hangings. At midnight he camped beneath a tanglethorn elm. A pale aurora walked the sky, staining the frozen clouds in ghost fire. Somewhere far north, that glow meant the others stirred. He lay awake upon his cloak, watching sparks slip from the hearth like dying stars, and thought of Jon at Winterfell. Dark-eyed, restive, half sure he was no true wolf. "You'll find truths at the wall," Benjen had told the boy. Yet he feared which truths sprang in snowdrifts. The secrets Lyanna had never meant to burden a child with. The riddle of a sword of mourning, and a harp strung with winter roses. Dawn would bring answers only to the patient, and patience, Benjen knew, was Icy's virtue, hard and slow. When the sun rose blood orange, he mounted and cantered north. Gulls followed the white knife's winding froth westward, as if drawn by the scent of salt, to which they had no memory yet belonged. By dusk, he could see the first gray shapes of the Woolfield palisades. Ravens perched upon every sparring post. They glared at him like black judges. He spurred past without pause. There would be no judgments rendered here, only at Winterfell, where direwolves prowled ancient vaults and Ned Stark weighed friend against foe, exactly once before he acted, as cold steel commands. In King's Landing the Red Keep never slept, but certain shadows deepened when the Hand's chair stood empty. Varys sat in a hexagonal chamber lit by a single lantern. Its lattice sides cast honeycomb patterns on a pair of half-naked boys kneeling over dice, pretending the Master of Whispers enjoyed their childish game. In truth, Varys listened to a whisper hidden between their dice rolls, a copper wire strung through the ventilation shaft and into the rookery tower. A cell sail at the docks had been bribed to pluck the line taut when the Golden Company's banner was sighted leaving Volantis. Tonight, the wire thrummed a heartbeat of news. Varys closed his eyes and felt the faint vibration. Confirmation the Exiles had finally sailed. 2 dragons, 2 dreams, 1 realm shivering on the hinge. He gave the boys copper stars, ushered them away, and snuffed the lantern, thinking, for a realm to survive, sometimes the right bastard must kill the right prince. Grand Maester Pycelle, meanwhile, dozed in his cedar chair, scattering crumbs of honeycake across a ledger of city granaries. His quill dangled from liver-spotted fingers. A spark from the hearth leapt onto a parchment margin and smoldered. By chance, the blackening hole swallowed the line that recorded how many bushels of barley Littlefinger's agents had purchased at half price from gullible riverlords. Pycelle's snores drowned the faint crackle. Later, a rat would feast on the char, and a small truth would vanish forever, as truths do when ash and vermin conspire. On Dragonstone, storm clouds boiled so low they scraped the merlons. Viserys stood atop the sea dragon tower, robe whipping around him, clutching the crimson egg. He had spent the last hour heating it over a brazier of driftwood soaked in whale oil. The black veins now glowed a dull red. Each gust threatened to tear the egg from his grip. "Hatch," he snarled into the roar. "Hatch and give me fire." Lightning split the sky, but the shell stayed silent, as dead as the ghosts of kings. When another sheet of rain lashed the parapet, Viserys cursed the egg, the wind, the memory of Rhaegar, and finally his own sister, asleep far below. He hurled the egg at the flagstones. It struck, rolled once, and came to rest unbroken, faintly smoking in the rain. Viserys knelt, hair plastered across his face, and wept for kingdoms that existed only in rage. Maester Kelvar found him at dawn, shivering beside the egg. He coaxed the prince inside, chafed his hands, poured mulled wine. Viserys drank greedily, never thanking him. Kelvar lingered by the hearth. "Your sister grows strong," he ventured. "Her lessons in High Valyrian." "Lessons matter when we have halls to fill with courtiers," Viserys snapped. "Until then, they are lullabies for pauper girls." He cradled the egg in his lap like a wounded animal. "Tell me again what the ravens bring." Kelvar hesitated. "Ships, the Golden Company. Some say Illyrio brokers marriage alliances." "Let them come," Viserys hissed. "If they bring sellswords, I bring dragons." But his thumb stroked a lifeless shell, and his eyes betrayed the fragile hope of a boy who once believed songs. Norvos thrummed with festival when Arthur Dane arrived. Aemon perched upon his hip beneath a slate-colored cloak stitched with no sigil. Bells tolled atop the bearded priest's towers, scattering white petals that smelled of almond and ash. The Golden Company's paymaster Strickland welcomed Dane into a marble foyer painted with murals of Nymeria's war barges. He eyed the child first, then the sword. "We know you," he said quietly. "And we know the boy you claim." Arthur bowed. "I claim nothing. He claims the blood of the dragon. How you value that blood is your decision." Strickland gestured toward a map stretched across walrus hide. Red pins marked ships off Lace. Blue pins darted up the Rhoyne. "Connington's lad will land at Storm's End come spring. 1 dragon is enough for a banner, sir. 2 dragons, sow confusion. What you offer may buy us crown or coffin." "Menas." Arthur's jaw tightened. "Prophecy speaks of 3 heads, and Sel's words speak of feed, coin, plunder." Strickland traced a slow circle around the pin that marked lease. "Fate's fine, but how many casks of salt pork does fate haul?" Arthur unsheathed Dawn an inch. Starlight rippled along the metal even in shaded hall. "Enough to feed every ghost you'll face if you back the wrong dragon." He closed the blade. "We sail for Dorne. There Prince Doran will weigh risks with subtler scales. If he refuses, I hide the boy where even the stranger shuns." "Mestare." Strickland considered, finger-tapping his chin. "We march at sunrise. Let the gods sort dragons when they hatch." That night, Arthur lay in a rented loft. Aemon slept curled against his chest, tiny breath warming the hollow in Arthur's throat where nightly songs had once echoed. He dreamt of Starfall's pale towers, of his sister Ashara laughing in purple dusk. She had loved Rhaegar, rumor said, and thrown herself into the sea after the prince died. Now Arthur carried a piece of Rhaegar's lineage, fragile as sea glass. When he woke before dawn, his cheeks were wet with salt. The Greyjoy rebellion burst upon the realm as sudden as a wave smashing a pier. At Stony Sept, Balon's longship slipped up the Blackwater rush and torched grain silos meant for the capital. At Seaguard, Roderick Greyjoy scaled the tall keep's wall in twilight fog and carved the silver heron sigil from Lord Mallister's breast. Yet the Ironborn failed to reckon with Stannis Baratheon. In the straits off Pebbleton, Stannis' flagship Fury rammed the Black Sar. Grappling lines flashed. Ocean spray turned red beneath the moon. By dawn the Iron Fleet had lost 9 ships, and Stannis had gained a legend, the lord who burned krakens and boiled salt water into tears. Robert received word while hunting in Winterfell's wolf woods. Fresh from chasing elk, he reeked of sweat and pine tar. "Stannis will break them," he said, yet a gleam of battle lust flared in his eyes. "I should have sailed." He glanced at Ned, walking at his side. "But then who would rummage through my ledgers and frown at my debts?" Ned smiled thinly. He had spent 3 weeks as hand, and already figures haunted his sleep. Casks unpaid, mint stretched thin, Tyrell loans blooming like weed across parchments. "Your Grace might start by refusing Lord Petter's mirthful accounting," he suggested. Robert grunted. "Littlefinger jokes, but gold's gold." He hefted a boar spear. "The realm will prosper once this Greyjoy nonsense ends." Behind them, Cersei rode with Sir Barristan. Snow glittered on her hood like crown jewels. She watched Robert's broad back and thought of Jaime's soft vow last night. "One day, my sweet, the stag will stumble." Her hand drifted to her belly. 3 children, yet she hungered still. For security, for silencing Ned Stark's northern warnings, for a realm where she ruled without Robert's loud shadow. When she saw a sleek shadow pass between fir boughs, she pictured the boar that would gore a king. Ned's youngest son Bran had climbed higher than ever, a thin tower that pierced dawn's pinkish haze. He waved at the distant royal party threading dogwood groves. Caitlyn's cries echoed faint but urgent. "Come down." Bran grinned and climbed. Then, voices. He paused, hidden in crenellations, and saw Jaime and Cersei entwined among the stone merlons, gold on gold. Bran's breath caught. He slipped, Rock scraped palms, he gasped. Jaime whirled, face paling beneath sunlocks. In an instant, dawn flashed brighter in Bran's memory than the sword Arthur carried. Jaime's eyes hardened, but not in cruelty, in calculation. He stepped forward, seized Bran's wrist. "Easy, boy." He looked at Cersei, then back. "Do you like stories?" Bran nodded dumbly, vision blurring. Jaime hauled him to safety. Cersei hissed something Bran didn't catch before vanishing down a stairwell. Jaime crouched before the boy. "Tell no one what you saw. Some tales kill their tellers." Bran, trembling, nodded again. Jaime ruffled his hair and strode off, cloak snapping. Bran descended slowly. Later he would remember only the cold print of stone on his knees and the odd kindness in the Kingslayer's eyes. But Cersei remembered everything. That night, she told Jaime the boy could ruin them. Jaime argued, softly fierce. "He will not speak. He is Ned's son. Honor steals his lips." Cersei paced like a cornered lioness. "Robert's bastards dot the crownlands, yet I birthed 3 lions, and if he learns their truth he'll drown them in wine." Jaime pulled her close. "Robert loves his cups more than suspicion." But even he felt how fragile the secret had become. In Braavos, a bravo named Syrio Forel cut water with a willow stick beneath moonlit bridges, each ripple reflecting candles of the house of black and white. He paused when a faceless acolyte glided past, cloak whispering like silk on steel. Syrio bowed. "The many-faced god still seeks, I see." The acolyte's voice held a smile. "And the first sword still dances." They exchanged a coin bearing a strange beetle sigil. Syrio tucked it beneath his sash. After the acolyte vanished, he read the etched words, "Snowwolf." He frowned. White Harbor? Winterfell? Either way, a storm brewed where ice reigned. At court, Littlefinger orchestrated whispers like a maestro. He teased Ned with half-clues about bastards, then steered him to Tobhomat's forge. Ned examined Gawain's tourney armor, gold digits soldered to each pauldron. The smith spoke proudly of gilded steel, and remarked on how the prince's hand matched the arm of his uncle Sir Jaime. Ned left haunted by seed and strength, by blacksmith gossip and Baratheon brows that never sprouted on the royal children. When Robert returned bloody and staggering from a solitary hunt 3 days later, Cersei wept for show. Maester Luwin, traveling with the court, found 2 long tusk gashes in the king's thigh. The boar had nearly gutted him. Robert laughed between swallows of wine, 4 flagons deep, insisting he gutted the beast first. That night fever raced through his veins. By morning, Luwin muttered of rot and the stranger's kiss. Ned sat at Robert's bedside. The king, delirious, grabbed his wrist. "Promise me, Ned," he groaned, a phrase that slashed the hand open with memory. "My boy Gawain, protect him. Keep the realm from Lion's claws, and Lyanna." He sank into half-sleep. Ned signed a parchment naming Gawain heir and himself protector until the boy reached manhood. But Varys's little birds already sang in the queen's ear. Cersei confronted Ned at dawn, still in morning black, though Robert breathed. "I thank you for your service," he said coldly. "Will no longer require it." Ned countered with Robert's decree. Sir Barristan pledged to obey the king's last command. Yet the gold cloaks, under Lord Commander Janos, Slint newly enriched by Littlefinger's coffers, took Ned captive on the throne steps. Joffrey, crownless yet enthroned, watched in amusement. Gawain was nowhere to be seen. Rumor claimed Varys spirited the boy in hiding hours before. The court gasped when Jaime strode forward, drew his sword, and placed himself between Slint and Lord Stark. "I gave vows to guard the king," he said. "Living or dying, Robert's word is law." His blade's point kissed Slint's paunch. The gold cloaks hesitated. Cersei's face stiffened as though ice trapped her veins. None noticed Littlefinger slipping out a side door, smiling. In the confusion, Arya darted from behind a pillar, wooden practice sword clutched like a viper. She slashed at a guard's knee, then vanished beneath tapestries before anyone recognized her. The distraction allowed Sir Barristan to pull Ned aside. "Leave the city," he whispered. Robert's death will open vipers' nests. But Ned refused flight. My daughters, my king, my honor. Barristan's gloved fingers tightened, then released. Honor, he knew, could be a noose. So could prophecy. By nightfall, ravens screeched from every rookery. Robert Baratheon dead, Joffrey Baratheon crowned. Cersei sent riders to Storm's End with demands. Renly surrender. Stannis kneel. Renly fled south. Stannis sailed east to Dragonstone, fuming. Across the narrow sea, the Red Priestess from Volantis watched flames coil in a bronze brazier shaped like a lion devouring a sun. Shadows leapt. She saw a stag pierced by golden antlers, a dire wolf snarling at a kraken, and in the heart of the fire 2 dragons circling each other, a pale one with eyes like violets, a darker one wreathed in storm. Between them coiled a third shape, neither dragon nor man, draped in snow that neither burned nor melted. The priestess bowed her head. Azor Ahai yet sleeps, she murmured. But dawn is promised. She sent her disciple Davos Seaworth to carry tidings to Stannis, speaking of Lightbringer and the power of kingly blood. Davos bowed, skeptical yet loyal. He had smuggler's pragmatism, but the firewoman's gaze burned true as noon sun. Stannis received Davos on a sea-lashed parapet of dragonstone. Lightning webbed the sky behind him. Blood and fire, she says. Stannis muttered. I'll bleed myself before I trust the fire. Yet he accepted a dagger of dragonglass and tucked it inside his surcoat. Jon Snow rode for Castle Black, cloak billowing, ghost padding silent as moonbeam shadow behind his courser. Benjen had offered his vow. Jon weighed his father's quiet sorrow when he told him of the wall. Catelyn had stood behind Ned, face stony. She loved her lord still, yet Jon's presence chipped at her calm. The wall promised purpose and distance. He carried no illusions of glory, only a hunger to belong. Samwell Tarly joined at Mull's Town, shaking upon a pony ill-suited to heavy riders. Others jeered the craven highborn, but Jon glimpsed kindness beneath Sam's flinch. That night, in a ruined watchtower, Sam confessed his father threatened to arrange a hunting accident, lest the heir diminish House Tarly's martial repute. Jon shared stale oatcakes, and they spoke till dawn about songs of dragons and distant seas. Ghost curled between them, red eyes gleaming. When they reached the wall, Jon stared up at the colossal ice, blue veins pulsing like trapped lightning. Ravens cawed from sentry cages, their breath frosting into crystals that fell like powdered diamonds. In that cold he felt a stirring akin to destiny, as though something sleeping inside him recognized the ancient rampart, called it home. Maester Aemon greeted recruits with a sad smile. His blind eyes clouded, but his ears caught every tremor of doubt. One night after chores, Jon visited the rookery. Aemon spoke of dragons. Targaryen my brothers were, he confided. Yet I chose watch over crown. His fingers brushed Jon's cheekbone, tracing an invisible sigil. Blood knows blood, even through snow. Jon swallowed questions. He wanted to ask if Aemon sensed more, if violet once shimmered behind his own irises. But vows demanded walls within as much as without. Word of Robert's death reached Norvos while Arthur drilled Golden Company swordsmen. Rain splattered the courtyard. Trumpets blared. Strickland approached, cloak soaked. Baratheon dead. Incest whispers breed. Dragons in exile rise. He studied Arthur. We sail at equinox. Aegon demands support. Arthur lifted Aemon, now 3, onto a hay bale. Prophecy still needs its third head, he said. Strickland stared at the child, dark hair, wide purple eyes, then nodded curtly. Then the company will shepherd 2 princes, not 1. They boarded the Galeass wind blown at dawn, pennants streaming gold and black. Sellswords cheered, tossing coins that flashed like fireflies. Aemon clutched Arthur's neck. Home? He asked. Arthur kissed his brow. Home, he promised, though neither knew what shore would honor that name. At Storm's End, Renly crowned himself king beneath the giant weirwood that Bran the Builder once planted. Highgarden knights bent knees to Queen Margaery, blossoming in a cloak of pink roses. The Reach's levees glittered like summer wheat under sun. Renly laughed, hands spread in welcome. "Wars are won with songs and pretty girls," he proclaimed, "not leeches and sermons." But Stannis marched west with a lean host, Red Priestess at his side, and the air grew colder wherever they camped, though the parchments still called it summer. Renly's scouts vanished at dusk. By dawn, only corpses of shadows curled on his tent flaps. On the third night, a shape like Stannis, yet not Stannis, entered Renly's pavilion, and slit his throat with a dagger of nothingness. Loras Tyrell wailed. Margaery's handmaids scattered. Storm's End shattered into chaos. When morning burnt away the mist, Renly's banner drooped, soaked in dew that looked like tears. Word rode hard to King's Landing. Cersei tasted victory sweet as mead. 2 kings now, Joffrey in the south, Stannis seizing the narrow sea, and between them Renly's numbers, scattered like petals in whirlwinds. Yet whispers of dragon princes reached even her chandeliered chambers. She ordered Pycelle to burn each raven bearing dragon news. The old man promised, yet his eyes gleamed with curiosity. Tyrion, raised to hand in Ned's stead, juggled wildfire jars and royal debts while studying a list very supplied. Men loyal to Stark still lurking in alleys, smugglers feeding Stannis powder of death, and a rumor a white-cloaked knight ferried a child of royal blood toward Dorne. Tyrion laughed at the last. Hidden hires breed like rabbits. Yet he coded a raven to Bronn all the same. Find the knight, weigh the child. The chain Tyrion forged for Blackwater Bay lengthened with each new rumor. War felt inevitable. He longed for a soft bed in some Essosi brothel, but dragons seldom let little lions nap. In the east, Khal Drogo's Khalasar thundered across shimmering sea of grass. Daenerys rode at his side, the eggs strung in a net behind her saddle. They rattled over each rise, a heartbeat of stone. One day Drogo fell from his horse, after a skirmish with Lázarine raiders, a poisoned arak nicking his breast. Fever followed. Daenerys turned to Mirri Maz Duur, desperate. Blood magic blackened the tent, and Drogo's eyes equally. When at last the flaps opened, Drogo breathed, but did not wake. His Khalasar fell apart. Jorah Mormont urged retreat to Qarth. Instead, Daenerys walked into the pyre she built for her husband. Eggs nestled against his dead chest. Night swelled purple. Sparks rose, and the world changed. Flames roared into a pillar that pierced constellations. At dawn, 3 dragons coiled around Daenerys' shoulders, chirping like flint striking marble. Jorah knelt weeping. The few Dothraki remaining cowered, muttering, "Blood of the dragon." Dany, soot-veiled, eyes glowing ember gold, lifted her face to a wind that smelled of salt and shadow. "I will not be a pawn," she vowed. "I will be the fire that forges winners." Illyrio's spies saw the red dawn and scrawled one word. Hatched. The parchment crossed the sea on the swifter of his brigs, bound for King's Landing. In a squall, the brig vanished, swallowed by a wave that looked suspiciously like a kraken's arm. Some truths the drowned god claims early. In Winterfell, Catelyn knelt beside a heart tree, tears freezing on lashes. Ned's raven spoke of treason, imprisonment, the throne's betrayal. She summoned Robb, tall now, gray eyes like broken slate. "Gather the banners," she said. "We ride south." Robb touched the weirwood's bleeding face, felt sap sticky like blood. Wolves howled beyond the wall. War drums pounded inside him. At River Run, Edmure Tully unfurled banners of Trout and Dire Wolf. "The North remembers," Robb declared from a rampart, "and the Riverlands will make them remember harder." When news arrived that Jaime Lannister defied his sister and sheltered Ned in the White Tower for a royal error, Robb paused mid-stride. Catelyn recognized the wolf's uncertainty. "Take his kindness," he urged, "but trust only family." Arya, lost in Fleabottom's spiderweb alleys, learned to slit purses under Yoren's tutelage. She dreamed of a man with no face teaching her to wear others. Each dawn she whispered a list. Cersei. Slint. Joffrey. Ilyn Payne. The list grew teeth. Sansa, hostage in the Red Keep, embroidered roses while Joffrey bragged of new crossbow bolts, tipped with Stannis finger bones. She smiled politely, then prayed each night to any god who would trade cruelty for mercy. The gods answered with silence, but silence sharpened her resolve. Eddard Stark sat in the White Tower, wrists raw from chains. Jaime visited at dusk, bearing wine. "I saved your life," he said, "though gods know why." Ned sipped, gaze level. "Perhaps to save your own soul." Jaime laughed. "That ship sailed when I crowned a madman's corpse." He grew somber. "Tell your daughter Bran saw nothing." Ned met his stare. "My daughter did not climb that tower." Applause stretched, filled with all that must remain unsaid. Jaime set the flagon down. "I ride at midnight to join the Riverlord's front. Pray I live. Without me, Cersei's worst angels fly free." Then, Nemos. After he left, Varys materialized from shadow. "The game tilts, my lord. Dragons in Essos, wolves at River Road, krakens thrashing. I counsel feather over stone." Ned's voice rasped. "The realm built on lies rots." Varys sighed. "Better rotting fruit than scorched earth." He produced a parchment bearing Renly's sigil crossed out by a red blot. "Kings drop like crows. Choose your storm." Ned looked north, though no window pierced the cell. "I choose the one that spares my children." Varys nodded. "Then you must confess treason, bend knee to Joffrey, and hope mercy blossoms." Ned clenched fists. Honor howled. Love answered louder. He agreed. In the great sept of Baelor, crowds gathered to witness. Cersei watched from a marble balcony. Joffrey perched on the throne like a spitting cat. Littlefinger fingered a Taroshi coin. Ned knelt, uttered the confession Varys scripted. Murmurs rose. Sansa sobbed. Arya, hidden among crowds, held her breath. Fingers on a stolen blade. Cersei nodded to Joffrey. "Exile to the wall." Bargain complete. But Joffrey's grin turned wolfish. "Bring me his head," he declared. Gasps ripped the plaza. Even Cersei blanched. Ser Ilyn advanced. Ned, eyes shut, heard a single cry, "No!" and knew Sansa's voice. Then a commotion. Snowflakes swirling under a blue sky. Arya sprang onto the dais, blade flashing. Before Ilyn raised his greatsword, a white direwolf leapt from shadow, ghost grown monstrous. He lunged at Ilyn, jaws clamping steel, toppling the executioner. Chaos erupted. Knights shouted, gold cloaks scattered. Jaime, unexpected, broke through ranks, sword in hand, guarding Ghost's flank. "Enough," he roared. He faced Joffrey. "Kill him, and you kill the realm." Joffrey shrieked. Cersei seized his arm. Back to the castle. They fled under shield of shields. Ned stood, chains fallen during the melee. Jaime cut the last link. "Ride, Stark, your wolves sound call." Arya grabbed her father's hand. Ghost growled low. They darted into a side door where Varys waited with a hooded cloak. "East Gate," he whispered. "A galley flies no banners. Sail and pray one dragon devours another." They escaped through potshop warrens while bells clanged alarm. In the river, Ned saw his own reflection blurred, a man unbound from vows yet tied to storms. He hugged Arya, Ghost padding ahead. They boarded the galley at dusk, the sails unfurled, catching a wind that smelled of myrrh and omen. Ned did not know where it aimed. Bravos, White Harbor, Ibn. Only that far behind, lies smoldered. Ahead, truths waited like wolves at wood's edge. Snow crunched under hooves on the King's Road, as Robb Stark advanced with a host of Northmen clad in boiled leather and steel. Torrhen Square answered, White Harbor too, banners snapping. The Greyjoy bellowed war songs, while Catelyn rode silently, clutching Ned's last raven. Alive, at sea, sailing east. Relief warred with terror. War paid no debts in happiness. They crossed the twins under uneasy truce. Walder Frey wanted hostages, promises, a seat for one of his brood. Robb consented, leaving Arya's direwolf Nymeria's howls in the old man's ears as reminder of northern wrath. On the other side, cattail marshes steamed beneath sun. Catelyn smelled death in that mist. At River Run they met the Lannister host and fought the Whispering Wood. Jaime's absence from enemy ranks sowed confusion. Robb's direwolf Grey Wind sowed panic. In darkness Cat saw green fire, wildfire traps Tyrion laid accidentally unleashed by Frey archers. The river caught reflections like shattered emeralds. When dawn broke, Lannister banners lay trampled among willows. But victory tasted muted. Word from White Harbor claimed Stannis besieged Storm's End, and dragons crossed the summer sea. War no longer wore two faces, it sprouted many. On Pike's highest tower, Balon Greyjoy watched his last warship limp home, sails shredded. A priest of the drowned god sprinkled seawater upon the deck. Balon's son Theon climbed the ladder, hair matted. "The North fights Lannister," he said. "We could pillage their coasts." Balon smirked. "Robb Stark holds you dear, but will he love a sea axe in his back?" Theon flushed but answered, "He will fear it, father. Fear is stronger." Balon gazed eastward where gulls screamed. "Fear is fleeting. Salt endures. Ready the black sails." A dozen leagues south of Lys, the wind-blown met a squall. Waves hammered the prow, rigging shrieked. Arthur strapped Aemon to his chest with an oilskin. Lightning struck the mainmast, splintering wood. Fire flashed. Sellswords tumbled like dice. Arthur slashed burning lines, shouting orders older than sail. In the chaos he lost sight of Strickland and of Aegon, rumored aboard a companion carrack. Long after the storm passed, dawn revealed only floating timbers. Wind-blown survived, but the carrack vanished. Arthur's grief hollowed him. Aemon wept from hunger. Arthur pressed the child to his breast as if warmth alone might ward despair. "Hold fast," he whispered. "We carry their hopes now." In the quiet that follows tempests, dawn's white blade gleamed a promise. Morning comes, however bloody the night. Deep in the haunted forest, 3 brothers of the Night's Watch found tracks, unlike any bear or elk, two-toed deep-pressed, traveling against wind. When they followed, ice crusted their beards in minutes. The youngest vanished into a shadow that walked between trees. The 2 older heard a sword of glass sing. They ran, but dawn found only one alive, muttering of blue eyes and dead things that did not bleed. Lord Commander Mormont sent a raven to King's Landing, to Stannis to Winterfell. The dead walked. Crows carried the message on black wings, scattering across snows like omens. Most maesters scoffed. But in Old Town, Archmaester Marwyn read the note and hurried to the highest tower where glass candles burned green. One candle flared brighter as he approached. He whispered, "Dragons wake, and so do their foes." The flame answered in flickers, forming shapes of swords of blue fire. Marwyn packed tomes and boarded a ship west. He aimed for Meereen first. The rumors said the Dragon Queen marched there. Knowledge must outrun ignorance if the realm hoped to survive. In the slums of King's Landing, a sellsword named Bronn found the White Knight in a pot shop. Hood drawn low, they shared sour wine. "I carry no dragonling," the knight said, voice rasped by salt air. Bronn laughed. "Then sell the sword. The Queen's hand pays well." The knight's eyes glinted. "No gold heavy enough to buy a star." Bronn shrugged. "Some men value gold. Others, women. You?" The knight rose. Morning. He left 3 silver stags. Bronn pocketed them, weighing pursuit. But something, fear or respect, rooted him. He drained the jug instead. Varys, hearing the story, smiled. Even Sellswords sometimes heed wisdom. Littlefinger, hearing later from Bronn, frowned. Wisdom never sired bastards or built keeps. We all fall to coin eventually. On a sun-bleached hill overlooking Korth, Daenerys surveyed her ragged Khalasar. Freed slaves, Dothraki stragglers, 1 exiled knight, 3 newborn dragons chirping. Yorat advised alliances. She nodded, yet her mind flew beyond the Jade Gates. Viserys claimed thrones with hubris. She would with awe. She ordered ships built of Carthene teak, hulls curved like dragon wings. Caravan guilds lined to donate coin, some out of fear, some fascination. She promised each guild a royal charter when she claimed Westeros. Her voice rang steel. The dragons screeched in answer, little tongues flicking sparks. Xaro Dixon Daxos gifted her a necklace of opals. She accepted graciously, then stored it away. Gifts twist into chains. At night, she walked among cages where the dragons slept coiled. She sang low Valyrian lullabies. Sometimes the black dragon, Drogon she named, stared at her with eyes like red suns, and she felt heat swirl in her chest, the foretaste of wilding power. She wondered if her father's madness had been a spark of dragon fire in mortal minds. In Riverrun Solar, Robb received messengers from White Harbor with news the Ironborn sacked Tall Heartland. The Stark Wolf weighed 2 wars. Catelyn urged alliance with Renly's widowed queen, seat vacant. The Great John urged riding straight for the capital before Tywin regrew fangs. Robb listened, finger tracing a map, and decided, half the army marches east to repel Greyjoy. The rest rides south with Mallisters and Tullys to secure Harrenhal. He named Roose Bolton commander of the eastern host. Catelyn's brows knit, but she held tongue. Wolves sometimes run with leeches if snow falls deep. Bolton set out with silent banners and colder eyes. In his train rode Ramsay, bastard of Dreadfort, smiling at storms. Tyrion stood atop the mud gate, studying chain links hoisted by oxen. Smoke from forges clouded the dawn. He turned to Podrick. Never trust fate, Pod. Trust Iron. Pod nodded, though he eyed the wildfire catapults nervously. Halline the pyromancer demonstrated a jar. Green flames sizzled water, refusing to die. Tyrion grimaced. Let's hope Stannis counts better than his alchemists. Behind them, Cersei rehearsed coronation oaths for Gowan, hidden safe. Joffrey fumed at his mother's whispered plans to send him east for his safety. He battered servants with a new whip until the hall reeked of fear. Sansa cleaned a wound on a maid's cheek and resolved the gods would not stay silent forever. She wrote a secret plea on scrap cloth and stuffed it inside a pigeon's leg band. North remembers. Wolves howl. Sing softly. The pigeon flew into gray cloud. Fate unknown. On the summer sea, Ned Stark's galley reached Braavos half-wrecked. Arya trained on deck each dawn with the captain's mate, learning knives as well as knots. Ned met with Sea Lord Donarian seeking transport to White Harbor. The Sea Lord warned of blockade by Lannister galleys. Stay, he offered. Braavos builds swords, not dungeons. But Ned's heart faced home. He bought 2 smaller cogs under false names and hired Syrio Forel as master-at-arms. Arya's eyes danced when she met him. Ned saw Lyanna's spark kindle. One twilight, as gulls screamed, a shadow wearing a many-faced coin approached Ned. He offered passage along shadowed routes in exchange for one favor to be named. Eyes pale as river bones, he waited. Ned refused, wary. The stranger bowed, murmured, Valardo Harris, and vanished. Syrio appeared, noting no footprints on damp planks. Some debts cut deeper than daggers, he said. Ned gripped his sword's wolf-head pommel. One day, every promise demanded steel. East of Pentos, Connington staggered from the surf, lungs burning with brine. He found Aegon prone amid wreckage, coughing. Tears furrowed Connington's grime-caked cheeks. They sheltered in a broken oarhouse. Days later, a fisher girl guided them inland where the Golden Company regrouped. Strickland had survived, though half the elephants drowned. Connington clasped 4 arms with him. The storm culled the weak, but our purpose sharpens, Connington vowed. The Stormlands wait for their rightful storm. Aegon, hardened by salt and loss, lifted his chin. And storms break chains. At Dragonstone, Stannis' fleet prepared. Davos approached him on the battlements, holding 3 leeches swollen with king's blood. Gendry, a smith's apprentice, rumored Robert's son. Edric Storm, ship from Storm's End, and a whore's babe taken from the capital. Stannis grimaced. Sacrifice is the cost of crowns. He threw each leech into the brazier, naming 3 usurpers. Joffrey Baratheon, Balon Greyjoy, Robb Stark. Flames popped like cannon shot. Smoke rose in twist. Davos watched, uneasy. Days later, Balon Greyjoy slipped on a rotted rope bridge during a squall and vanished into Maelstrom. Joffrey choked on a pie crust at a feast, but lived. Robb Stark cut his hand on a raven's talon, laughed away omen. Prophecy seldom spends itself cleanly. In Korth, Daenerys gazed upon desert horizon. Her advisors counseled patience, but dragons grew. She mounted Drogon one dawn. The dragon leapt, scales raking marble, wings snapping open. They climbed into searing blue. Below, market domes shrank. Wind whipped silver hair. She exulted in shadow, passing over caravans. Men stared upward, mouths open. When she landed, dust billowed. She decreed, "We march for Slaver's Bay. We gather swords, ships, slaves to free, and storms to ride. Then we cross narrow sea." The dragons roared as if answering her pledge across leagues. At a lonely inn near the crossroads, Brienne of Tarth, sworn to Renly's memory, met Catelyn Stark under lantern light. Word of Ned's survival arrived on tongues of sparrows. Brienne knelt. "Your husband lives, so does my vow." Cat's eyes gleamed with tears she hadn't time to shed. They formed an unlikely sisterhood, widow of honor, maiden of strength, both forging north through chaos. Queen Cersei sat alone in Maegor's holdfast, sampling arbor red. She held a letter from Dorne sealed in orange wax shaped like a sun spear. It spoke of princes visiting King's Landing soon, bearing gifts of peace. She smiled. Perhaps Dorne would align against the dragons. Yet at letter's bottom, a single line chilled her. "The innocent will revenge the innocent." She burned the parchment, but smoke etched that sentence in her mind like acid on glass. In Sunspear, Arianne Martell prepared dresses of mourning, black and desert gold. Beneath them she strapped steel. Her father's slow game neared its final board. She and Oberyn would ride to the capital, but their daggers pointed at different hearts. Aemon, she heard, sailed with a Star Knight. Aegon marched with Gorget of Dusk Rose. She smiled thinly. Dragons hatched by fire or sea, all would know the sun's sting. On the wall's parapet, Jon Snow watched red dawn bleed over frosted forests. Maester Aemon stood beside him, frail but unbowed. "A Targaryen alone in the world is a terrible thing," he murmured. Jon swallowed. "Maybe dragons fly to us." Aemon nodded. "Or you to them." Horns sounded from the woods. One blast, then silence. Rangers returned, battered, eyes wide. "Dead do not stay dead," one whispered before collapsing. Jon felt something shift, deep as tectonic stone, prophecies hinged turning from thrones to nightmares. He penned a raven to Robb. Night falls, and now Watcher becomes hunted. Send men, send fire. The raven winged south across twilight. It passed over fields where wolves and lions clashed, over ship decks where krakens drowned, over dunes where dragons took flight. Storms converged. In every corner of the realm, men looked up, sensing invisible teeth closing. Yet amid fear, fires sparked, flames of rebellion, hope, vengeance. Some would gutter in wind, some would blaze until dawn unveiled a world remade. Far below the raven's flight, in a humble crofter's cottage near the Trident, a fisherwoman found 3 ruby stones washed ashore, glimmering like captive sunsets. She set them on her mantle, ignorant of songs they had once adorned. That night her hearth crackled higher, though she swore she had laid no fresh log. Embers danced ruby red. In the fire's heart, a faint harp note rang. Lingering like a promise, the river never truly drowned. In that sound, perhaps the ghost of the prince who loved prophecy smiled, because the game for which he spilled blood and dreams was not yet lost. It had merely moved to deeper board, where winter and fire would play their last, longest song. The galley's timbers shuddered in the grip of winter swells, its lanterns painting oil-slick ribbons across Blackwater. Ned Stark stood at the prow while Ghost prowled beside him, lean and pale against the night. Wind rifled Ned's graying hair as he tried to read the constellations that once had guided Brandon south to River Run. The stars looked different. Perhaps he had changed more than they. Braavos had lain 2 weeks behind, green with moss and intrigue. Syrio Forel drilled Arya each sunrise on the canted deck, wooden blades clattering while gulls wheeled overhead. The Sea Lord's secret route snaked through hidden inlets, no chart marked, salty creeks choked with reeds, coves haunted by smugglers, shoals where oysters gleamed like chipped moonstone. Twice they passed iron-borne longships skulking for plunder. Once Ghost Snarl alerted watchmen before grappling hooks found purchase. Arrows hissed. One lodged in a plank at Ned's feet. He pulled it free, the shaft barbed with Kraken sigils, and cast it overboard. The sea devoured the memory without a splash. Now the northern coast of the Bight uncurled beneath a veil of drifting snow. Far ahead, a beacon winked from White Harbor's Wolfston Tower, a promise of refuge if Lord Wyman's banners still flew the direwolf. Ned tightened his cloak. Behind him, muttered voices filtered up from the waist deck. Sailors dice playing. Arya begging Syrio for a real sword, the Bravos' cheerful rebuttal. Their laughter gladdened him and hurt at once. Sansa songs, Bran's chatter, Rickon's toddling fury. He ached for them all. But safety was illusion. News dripped into the captain's cabin faster than caulk through seams. Robert dead, Joffrey crowned, Stannis mustering, Robb named king in the north, Balon fallen, Greyjoy raiders raging, dragons alive. Ned had listened until his head throbbed. One message alone mattered. Catelyn marched south at Robb's side. His family was in the teeth of war. Duty pointed home. A pale dawn broke as the galley eased up the white knife on a rising tide. Fog clung to the river like wool. White Harbor emerged, half cloud, half castle. Marble quays, warehouses, the chunky new keep on its Swan Neck promontory. Wharfs bustled despite the chill, cod boats unloading barrel-sting catches, grain barges from the Manderley farms, river folk bartering eels. As they warped alongside, a flight of white gulls burst skyward, screaming like alarm bells. Lord Wyman Manderley himself waited at the head of the pier in a sealskin cloak, cheeks rosy, eyes sharp despite layers of flesh. When Ned descended the gangway he knelt, a grunt of knees and winced dignity, and kissed Ned's knuckles. "My sword and city, Lord Stark. You are sore missed." Ned lifted him gently. "My thanks, old friend. But titles are dust while the realm bleeds. Is there news of Robb?" "Mwante." Wyman's expression tightened. "He holds River Run and marches east to cut Tywin's road south. Catelyn rides with him. Winterfell stands strong. Sir Roderick rules in your stead. Yet there are whispers of Ironborn sniffing the stony shore and Bolton men growing restive." "Restive," Ned repeated, tasting unease. "Roose rides for my son's cause." Wyman's long silence said enough. Arya bounded down the plank after Syrio, eyes alight at harbor chaos. She bowed awkwardly to Wyman, whom she remembered only as a jolly shape at courts. Ghost padded behind, hackles bristling at strange scents. Dock workers recoiled, Wyman's guards half-raised halberds until Ned murmured, "He's my son's protector." The direwolf snorted and sat, tail sweeping the pier like a snowy scythe. In Wyman's audience hall, beneath frescoes of mermaids and ships, Ned outlined their flight, sparing details of crimes he'd glimpsed in King's Landing. Wyman listened, nibbling honeyed lamprey. Beside him, Sir Marlon Manderley traced war lines on a salt-stained map. Bolton camps at Baratheon. Frey ferries marshalling ironborn longships sighted near Bear Island, but not yet ashore. "The North is aboard with too many pieces," Marlon said. "And some change sides mid-move." "I need riders," Ned decided. "Fast ones, with Raven copies, to Robb, to Winterfell, to the Wall. They'll carry truth. I live and seek to join the king with White Harbor's strength." Wyman nodded. "You'll have them before dusk. And ships, if the seas must speak quicker." "Nuis so." A hush fell as he considered Ned's weary face. "Rest, my lord. The North moved on when we feared you dead. It must now move wiser, not faster." Robb Stark's council convened in the drafty gallery of Harrenhal's Kingspire, where melted swords formed grotesque stalactites above. Winter's first bite crept through cracks, torches smoked fitfully. Robb stood at the charred hearth in gray leather. Gray wind sprawled huge at his heels. Catelyn sat near, hair caught by firelight. Around them, the battle-shocked lords of River and North argued paths to victory. Edmure wanted a strike at Lannisport to make rich lions bleed. Grayson wanted Tywin's head on a pike. Roose Bolton, face pale as sweat, counseled patience. Tywin lost scouts in the Whispering Wood, yet holds more swords. If we overextend, we expose the neck of our realm. His gray eyes slid to Catelyn, unreadable. A ranger burst in, helm frosted. Raven from White Harbor. Robb slit the tube. A breath later, his face shifted from iron to raw wonder. "Father lives," he whispered. The hall erupted. Clatter of benches. A mother's gasp, "Don't hear." Robb read aloud Wyman's pledge of men and grain, Ned's intent to join them. When cheers faded, Catelyn's hands trembled against her gown. "The gods are not finished with Starks," she breathed. Bolton studied the message's seal. "If Lord Stark travels by land, the Dreadfort's road lies swiftest." Catelyn's brow furrowed. "And narrow," she said. But Robb clapped Bolton's shoulder. "See Winterfell's storehouses steadied, Lord Roose. I will not have Ironborn raiding undefended coasts while we rejoice." Bolton inclined his head, lips thin. That night, Catelyn found Robb alone at the weirwood sapling transplanted into Harrenhal's Godswood ruin. Snow lay sprinkled like salt on burnt earth. She wrapped him in her cloak. "Your father's safe, but we are far from home." Robb's voice cracked. "I carry his sword and crown, yet feel half a boy again." He glanced at gray wind nosing flakes. "If father returns to command." "We follow," Catelyn finished. "Your bannermen swore to the Starks. A crown is a weight, not a wall. Share it." She kissed his brow, tasting ash and snow. At King's Landing, dawn burned through frost-webbed arrow slits, as Tyrion Lannister limped along the new inner rampart had ordered, stacked with stone cauldrons. Smoke from forges mixed with sour fish stench. He paused near a half-completed scorpion emplacement to survey Blackwater Bay. Stannis' fleet speckled the horizon like crows on wheat, sails striped black and fiery red. Above the congested harbor bobbed wildfire jars disguised beneath tar-lined shallops. Podrick trotted after him, clutching parchment. Balon Greyjoy dead, Pike in chaos. Ironborn chieftains fighting over scraps. "One kraken tentacle severed, my lord," Pod ventured. Tyrion grunted. "Sever the head to still the beast. Alas, the sea provides infinite replacements." Inside the Tower of the Hand, Shae awaited, eyes glittering. Tyrion brushed her cheek, then pointedly studied a ledger. Joffrey's wardrobe expenses. Each column overflowed, while grain stores dwindled. He muttered about silk and steel and fools wearing both. Shae teased a laugh from him, but only for a heartbeat. They were interrupted by Halline the pyromancer delivering fresh vials of wildfire, green light slushing malevolently. "Enough," Tyrion snapped, "lest we roast inside our own walls." Halline's fanatic grin never faltered. Fire is God's bright gift. Only unbelievers fear its judgment. When the door closed, Shae shivered. Tyrion rubbed his scarred nose. "If we win tomorrow, zealots will claim the gods favored them. If we lose, they'll still claim favor. Crowns merely change listeners." Stannis Baratheon paced the deck of fury while rolling seas lapped her hull. Below, galleys formed crescent ranks. Siege towers lashed flat to their decks, catapults cannon loaded with stone and pitch. Melisandre stood at prow, scarlet robe dappled with spray. She whispered to flames cupped in her palm, seeing something there that hardened her serene face into iron. Ser Davos joined her, wary of unnatural light. "The chain will trap us if rumor holds." "The Lord of Light shows victory," she answered. "Fire cleanses chains." Davos glanced aft where Salad Horsan's Selsail squadron lurked uncertain. "Fire and Blackwater make strange bedfellows. Pray we do not drown in both." Stannis barked orders. Drums boomed, oars bit water, and the fleet surged toward the mouth of the river like a spear of ash-black wood. High on Aegon's Hill, Cersei watched from a window slit. Gawain seated at her feet, Myrcella plaiting Sansa's hair. Joffrey strode the terrace below, brandishing a crossbow and boasting to guards about shooting traitors. Cersei's eyes flicked from son to daughter to the sullen northern girl. Sansa endured plights with stiff grace. Arya's escape had taught her masks. "Do you pray, little dove?" Cersei asked. Sansa's fingers froze. She murmured, "For the city, your grace." Cersei smiled thinly. "Prayers seldom save cities." She glanced at Gawain, Jaime's secret son by law, yet Robert's heir by signature, that had vanished the day Ned Stark escaped. She must hide or hurl him forward. The choice shifted each dawn. Outside, bells began to toll. The signal, Stannis upon the river. The Battle of Blackwater opened beneath a sky, bruised violet. Stannis' galleys rode upriver to meet a skeleton royal fleet. At first oarsmen jeered, so few defenders, but then wildfire exploded in a sheet of emerald doom, swallowing half the lead line as the hidden pots shattered. The river itself seemed to ignite, and screams rode steam clouds skyward. But Stannis' center drove on, cutting around burning hulks. His flagship smashed through the boom chain. Tyrion had hoped to spring, severing links before they rose taut. On the walls, Tyrion cursed, signaled backup. "Release chain anyway." It lifted through water, snagging the rear half of Stannis' fleet as they entered the mouth. Ships that now had nowhere to go but into the spreading green inferno. Sails burst like parchment. Men leapt and flailed, aflame before they drowned. Yet fury and 8 war galleys slipped through unharmed. Grappling lines hissed over mudflats. Siege towers crashed against King's Landing's seawall, and Southron soldiers spilled across the parapets. Tyrion drew his sword, leading a charge of city watchmen over gutted corpses. Podrick killed his first man, eyes wide like a child seeing snow. Jaime appeared on the rampart astride a white courser, gold bright, commanding reserve Lannister knights. He grinned at Tyrion, odd kinship found in flame, and plunged into the melee. Tyrion followed, hacking at a knight's calf, only to be knocked to his knees when a maul clipped his helm. Blood spurted. Pod dragged him under a fallen mantlet. In haze he heard bells, a lion's roar perhaps. He thought of Shae, and the color of her laugh. Inside the Red Keep, Cersei ushered Gawain, Myrcella, and Sansa toward Maegor's hidden passages. She half expected Sandor Clegane to bar her way, but the hound had gone missing. Talk of fire haunting his steps. In the Queen's ballroom, she found Sir Lancel wounded, arrow through shoulder, still clutching the wine she'd ordered for Joffrey's nerves. "Your Grace," he croaked, "the king desires your presence at the gate." "Let him desire," she snapped, shoving past. A moment later, Lancel collapsed, blood mingling with spilled wine. She gathered the children beneath the iron chandelier shaped like a twisted dragon. Her thoughts roamed to the night of Rhaegar's death. The rubies, the river, and the prophecy of a younger queen to cast her down. Dragons flew now, yet she still held the capital. One child dead, one lost, one bastard saved. Was that victory? Her nails dug crescents in her palm. By dusk the tide turned. Tyrion's ambushes in the alleyways, wildfire lobbed from scorpions, and Jaime's cavalry sally broke Stannis' infantry inside the mudgate. On the river, the trapped rear of his fleet burned to cinders. Stannis himself led survivors onto the quays, pushing toward the city stair. But there met Kevan Lannister's adamant wall of pikes. For an hour the lines ground like millstones. When Ser Loras Tyrell's Renmont host, seeking Renly's vengeance, erupted from the Kingswood to strike Stannis' flank, the Baratheon banners finally faltered. Stannis fought free, hauled onto a longboat by Davostot. They fled under moonlight, leaving smoke-black silhouettes of towers and corpses behind. Inside the city, bells of victory rang, though no one knew whom to thank: Tyrion, Jaime, Wildfire, or the gods. Tywin rode in next dawn with fresh host, copper sun glinting on crimson banners. Cersei greeted him with Gawain in her arms. Tywin eyed the boy, noticed gold in his hair, said nothing. Jaime's armor dripped blood and ash. He watched his father's cold satisfaction as if tasting old bile anew. Tyrion woke 3 days later in Maester Franken's cluttered chamber, face bandaged. Shae sat vigil, tears dried into salt runnels. News reached him that Joffrey had publicly thanked Lord Tywin as savior, and named him Hand, slighting Tyrion's role. Worse rumors whispered the dwarf lay near death when victory came. Some courtiers laughed at his absence. He ground teeth, felt pain ignite behind eyes. The city had survived, but gratitude drowned in politics faster than sailors in wildfire. Across the sunset desert, Daenerys marched with unsullied phalanxes and freed slaves swelling daily. Astapor's red walls lay behind, Yunkai ahead. She allowed herself only brief campfires each night. Her dragons needed sky, and she needed their heat. Drogon grew bold, hunting goats, and occasionally singeing a soldier's cloak for sport. Rhaegar fashioned new saddles of boiled leather. She practiced turns and dives, thighs bruised, hair afire with wind. A masked shadow visited her one dusk, Quithy of the Shadow. Eyes like starless pools. 3 heads rise, she intoned. 2 of blood, 1 of song. Beware the spear that glitters in dusk. It seeks the second head. Daenerys pressed for meaning. Quaithe dissolved into dust. Yora called it sorcery and risk, but admitted spies spoke of a boy in golden company garments. Aegon Targaryen. Dragons in duplicate unsettled them. Dany felt only curiosity, then resolve. The realm big enough for 1 dragon queen. On the honeyed plains, near the ruins of Summerhall, a golden host gathered. Jon Connington rode at their head, Aegon astride a sleek grey courser, armor newly gilded with ruby-eyed dragon. Sellswords knelt as he passed, saluting him as young dragon. Connington's heart swelled. Rhaegar reborn may be better. They had landed at Rain House, Stormlander houses, flocking once word spread of Baratheon madness. Knights remembered Rhaegar's melancholy songs, mourned Robert's drunken death, and despised Joffrey's cruelty. Now they clasped hands and pledged spears. A raven from Norvos arrived, Arthur Dane and Prince Aemon safe in Dorne. Connington read it thrice. He pictured Ashara's smile. 2 dragons and prophecy's riddle complete, yet riddles often demanded sacrifice. He folded the message into his gauntlet. They would march on King's Landing once Storm's End fell. First, they would negotiate with Stannis or burn him. Fire chose. Roose Bolton's host trudged through rime-crusted moors toward Deepwood Motte to repel Ironborn. With him rode his pale son Ramsay, fingering a flute carved of wolf bone. Snow spat like ashes from gray skies. Scouts reported Theon Greyjoy holed in the castle, defiant. Bolton studied the walls, calculating yields like butchers weigh carcasses. That night he dispatched Ramsay under truce banner, offering Theon safe conduct if he yielded. Theon hesitated, pride warring fear. He opened gates, only 30 men at his back. Bolton men poured through, slitting throats swiftly. Theon was bound, beard singed, eyes pleading. Ramsay smiled pleasant as frostbite. "Reek," he whispered. "My name is Reek," then flayed strips from Theon's little finger until the prince screamed. Bolton watched impassive. North needed discipline. Fear was quickest tutor. A raven to Robb spoke of victory, omitting flaying. Another to the Dreadfort flew unsealed. Direwolf hides for winter hearths, it read, signed with a red flayed man. Servants trembled. At White Harbor, Ned prepared to ride inland with Manderly heavy horse. Before dawn, he visited the Sept, praying for wisdom. As he left, Wyman's youngest son Wylis met him with a bundle. A cuirass engraved with direwolf and trident entwined. "Father had this forged when word reached of your death. Wear it now for life." Ned thanked him, strapping steel over wool. Ghost nudged his hand. Arya approached, face serious. Syrio had gifted her a slender Bravos blade, needle-thin steel from Qohor. She clutched it proudly. "I will ride too." Ned knelt. South is no dance floor. Arya's jaw set. Ned saw Lyanna again, in stubborn chin, fire-fleck eyes. He relented, assigning her to his own guards, Ghost shadowing them. As they rode out the north road, fisherfolk cheering. Snowflakes spiraled like white feathers. Ned glimpsed dread in that beauty. Storms brewed beyond horizon. Beyond the wall, Jon Snow stood in the ancient fist of first men, gloved hand resting on the cold obsidian dagger, Sam had used to kill the other that attacked Gren. The rangers of Mance Raider's host ghosted through woods, free folk massing. Jon's mission as a spy grew perilous. Ygritte's laughter melted his resolve nightly. Yet the White Walkers remained deeper threat. Mance planned to breach the wall, flee south from ice demons. Jon debated sending ravens soon as he broke away. But he had no cage, no bird, only wind. One starlit night Varamir's sixskins roused the wildling camp. It was not wolves but shadows slicing tents, blue-eyed things wearing dead men's skins. Jon helped cut them down, fiery torches searing them to steam. A boy half-frozen cried that giants on mammoths fell at Milkwater, slain by white mist. Terror pulsed through the horde. Only fire saved them. The wall still towered impenetrable. Jon decided he must rejoin the Watch, whatever oath he'd made Mance. Dawn pregnant with doom could not wait. He smuggled a message to Corran half-hand via a beaten crow found in an abandoned wildling rookery. He sealed it with mud, prayed the birds survived skies where dead things flew. In Sunspear, Arthur Dayne strode the shadowed halls of the Water Gardens to stand before Prince Doran. Aemon, now 4, clung to his leg. Dayne bowed, dawn glittering like a pale promise on his back. He told of storms, twin dragons, and prophecies hunger. Doran listened, gout-swollen hands steepled. Arianne, Oberyn, Illyria Sand ringed him, eyes lighting. When Rhaegar died, Doran said, voice soft, Elia and her children died blind to justice. Now justice wears their faces again. He reached to stroke Aemon's hair. Doran will shield you. Arthur knelt, relief shuddering him. Oberyn unsheathed a blade, pricked his own thumb, and let a drop fall to tile. Blood calls blood. When we strike, no child of the lion escapes. Arianne watched Aemon's violet gaze. In them she saw sunrise beneath desert storms. Messengers raced for the Stormlands. The sun allied with Dragon's dawn. Sandor Clegane rode north alone, haunted by flame memories. He reached salt pans, leagues from war fronts, seeking wine and forgetting. There he found septa corpses and smoke from Lannister marauders. The city burned by Gregor's abandoned men. Rage pulled him back onto the road. He rode hard west, and then north, unsure of destination, until he heard talk of a cripple boy ruling Winterfell, while wolves fought lions south. He turned his horse to the Wolf's Road. He'd kept a vow to protect little birds poorly. Maybe he could guard pups instead. Sansa, newly 13, learned her first true game. She touched Loras Tyrell's hand as healers bandaged his arm. She praised his courage, passed him a silk square embroidered with roses and snowflakes. He kissed it, tears unshed. She whispered that Ned lived and Joffrey would never wed her. Her heart was free for knights of honor. Tyrell's eyes widened at secret power disguised in courtesy. Within days word reached Lady Olenna, who summoned Sansa to a shaded balcony and offered honeycakes. They spoke of thorns and lions. The old woman's wit cut deeper than steel. When Sansa departed, Olenna sighed. Sweet child's petals hide steel. We may need both. Winter fell early that year. Across Westeros, thin snow veiled corpses and crowns alike. Ravens croaked prophecy. 3 dragons rising, dead men walking, wolves gathering. In each keep, candles burned late into night while lords traced maps, wondering where storm would break next. In Harrenhal, Robb met messengers bearing news from White Harbor, his father crossing the neck. Joy swept the camp, horns blew. Rey wind leapt, as if smelling kin. Robb ordered march. They would retake Moat Cailin, join Ned, and strike west before Tywin regrouped. Catelyn whispered to Edmure that she feared Bolton's chill more than Lannister fire. Still, hope flowered in her chest. Hope of husband's embrace, of family reforged before the stranger claimed more. Yet in the twilight of a nameless field beyond Maidenpool, a pale rider reined a coal-black stallion. Eyes like chips of moonlit ice surveyed south, seeing mortals scurry in wars of petty crowns. Behind him marched ranks of corpses, stiff in frost-rimmed mail. The rider raised a blade of crystal that caught gloom and shattered it into spears of blue. Snow began to drift, though skies were clear. The army of the dead moved south, slow, unstoppable. In their path, neither crown nor dragon mattered, only fire alive would stand. Tyrion Lannister limped onto the charred quay of Blackwater and stared at the river that had tried to kill him. A black shape floated by, the husk of a burned galley, mast half melted. In its reflection, he saw his own bandaged face, stitches gnarl-weaving cheek and brow. He remembered the moment of near death, the maul, the darkness, and wondered whose hand set the assassin on him. Cersei's? Joffrey's? Tywin's? Something inside him hardened beyond flame. He snapped a chunk of soot from railing and tossed it in. "You missed," he whispered to ghosts. Behind him, Shay approached. He touched her hand. It felt warm, alive. "When dragons come," he said, "I'll buy you wings so we both survive." She kissed him, salt and smoke and foolish hope. The night Ned Stark reached Moat Cailin, snow howled sideways. Bolton's dikes and ramparts rose ghost-like beyond marsh pools, iced ankle-thick. Torches dotted the ruins. Roose himself came out to greet the Lord of Winterfell. Words polite as sugar, eyes dead as fish. He offered hot wine and rooms. Ned accepted wariness coiled. Ghost paced, lips pulling from teeth. At feast, Ramsay played lute, strings sour enough to make dogs howl. Servants brought pork, seasoned heavily, blood sausage, dark and pungent. Ned's men ate warily. That night, Arya whispered to her father. She saw flakes of skin in kitchen trash. Ned tamped fear, ordering guard doubled. Before dawn, horns blew. Grey Wind's arrival with Robb's outriders. Bolton's men opened gates. Reunion roared. Father and son embraced under brittle starlight. Died. Tears froze on beards. Robb knelt. Ned pulled him upright. "No more kneeling," he said. "Stand with me. Winter walks." He told Robb what he knew of White Walkers, dragons, Stannis, Aegon. Robb reported Theon's capture and Ironborn retreat. They stood by brazier, maps between. Together they planned march west to intercept Tywin near the God's Eye. One battle to bleed lion claws before dragons descended. But as they spoke, a raven tapped the window. It bore the mark of the night's watch. Ned cracked the seal. Jones' stiff script, ink blotched by cold. The dead advance. Need men. Need fire. And 3 words that cut deeper. Winter is here. Silence grew thick. Robb stared. Catelyn, just entered, went pale. All their battles south felt suddenly childish. Ned closed his eyes, imagining Benjen lost in dark snows, Lyanna's cry, rubies on riverbed, the chill of prophecy older than all. "We ride north," he said at last. Robb exhaled as if punched. The war becomes meaningless if the world dies. Bolton watched from shadow, expression unreadable. Ramsay's fingers plucked discordant strings, a tune of flaying and frost. At Dragonstone, Stannis brooded over Blackwater's ruin. Melisandre urged sacrifice, king's blood, bastards, onion knight treason. Stannis banished the Red Woman below the fiery tunnels. He would not be puppet. Yet at night, her shadow slid under his door, whispering of a winter greater than thrones. She showed him flames where white demons marched. Stannis gripped Lightbringer, half believing. He sent ravens. To Robb, to Tywin, even to Daenerys across the sea. Brief Stark, the war of the dawn comes. Ben Pride, stand with me or freeze. Few answered. Yet messages flew at least, the beginning of alliance, or the measure of men's folly. The Golden Company broke siege lines at Storm's End and raised black and red banners over the long sea tower. Aegon watched sunrise from parapet, Connington at his side. Far below, storm waves hammered cliffs. "My father died for dragons," Aegon said. "I will live for people." Connington smiled sadly. A king must be dragon and shepherd both. A ship approached, orange sails of Dorne. On deck stood Arianne Martell, her cloak snapping sand-colored. Beside her, Arthur Dayne cradling young Aemon. As the ship moored, Aegon descended, heart hammering. 2 living links to Rhaegar stepped onto stony ground, Prophecy thrummed like tightened harpstrings. Arianne bowed, eyes assessing. Dane bent knee, presenting the boy. Prince Aemon, of House Targaryen. Aegon's breath caught at the child's violet gaze, mirror of his own. He knelt, touched the boy's cheek. Warmth spread, recognition of destiny, heavy yet right. Connington swore fealty anew. Golden Company captains knelt. Arianne offered Dorne's spears. Aegon accepted, promising justice for Elia. That night, beneath torches, they formed a pact. Dragons and sun would march as one on King's Landing, come spring. 3 heads indeed, a trinity forged of storm, dawn, and desert heat. Somewhere far across narrow sea, a dragon queen gathered fire. But here on Shiprock Cliffs, another dragon's roar took shape. Walder Frey revised invitations for an autumn feast to celebrate Edmure Tully's upcoming marriage to Roslyn. Ravens bore them to Robb, Tywin, and even Balon's fractured heirs, any lord who might serve Frey fortunes. Behind parchment courtesies lurked letters sealed in Bolton crimson. Bargains whispered, blood priced. In Dreadfort, Roose read Frey's missive and toyed with a leech swelling on his palm. Ramsay observed, eyes gleaming. Shall we play the quiet game, father? Roose smiled thinly. Quiet and cold. Syrio Forel trained Arya daily among Moat Caelan's toppled stones. Ned watched one dawn as she flowed through water dance forms, needle flicking. Ghost sat sentinel. Syrio approached Ned after. The girl learns truth of blade, but truth of self still hides. She sees too much death, Ned said. Us all must who would carve death's throat. Syrio returned. Perhaps soon she will choose names to keep, not kill. Ned pondered that. He had told Arya of Jon's warning. Her eyes had widened, but not with fear. Dragon glass, she said. Sam's dagger. Ned asked how she knew. She shrugged. I hear things. She pointed north. We have to help, whatever everyone south thinks. Ned embraced her. We will. In King's Landing, winter made beggars of thousands. Grain prices soared. Bread riots flared. Tywin levied harsh tithes. Littlefinger speculated on flour, growing richer. Tyrion confronted him atop the Iron Gate. You gamble with hunger, he spat. Littlefinger smiled. I gamble with appetite. I always win. Tyrion's palm itched for a dagger, but politics forged subtler steel. He drafted an edict increasing dock fees on pettier shipping partners. War of Quills began. Meanwhile, Queen Cersei plotted to secure Gawain's claim. She needed Tywin's blessing, yet sensed suspicion. She summoned Qyburn, the disgraced maester, to her dark laboratory beneath Maegor's. Make a protector, she ordered. One loyal only to me. Qyburn smiled, eyes like bruises, and spoke of giant corpses, iron-born nets dragged from Blackwater's mud. Men swollen with wildfire, bones fused. Cersei's stomach churned, but ambition swallowed revulsion. At the wall, horn blasts 3 long and dreadful pealed across snowfields, White Walkers approaching the ancient gate of the Night Fort. Jon Snow and Lord Mormont mustered every ranger and steward with bow or spear. Wildling prisoners cowered in ice cells. Sam clutched his dragonglass dagger. Pip muttered prayers. Dolorous Ed cracked gallows humor until fear strangled words. Figures emerged between wind-carved drifts, tall, corpse-pale, eyes blazing blue. Behind them shambled wights. Men, giants, even a great white bear half-skeletal. Jon's knuckles whitened on long claw. Loose! Arrows hissed. Some struck walkers and shattered like glass. Others pierced wights, who kept advancing. The first of them reached the ice trench, falling into burning pitch pools prepared hours earlier. Flame roared green, wildfire barrels. Tyrion had donated years ago, now priceless. But the others were not deterred. A tall one strode through flame. Fire froze upon its armor. Jon charged across the gate bridge, heart thunder. He met the creature's crystal blade with Valyrian steel. The clash sang a note so high it cracked ice. Sparks of blue and silver whirled. Jon parried again, felt the cold bite through mittens. Then Sam's dragonglass dagger flew from wall-top, spinning end over end. It struck the walker's neck. Light like moon dawn pierced the gloom. The walker shattered into powder. Whites shrieked, stumbling. Men cheered, but more shapes appeared beyond snowfall. Thousands, maybe. Ravens burst from rookery as if feeling death's approach. Jon called retreat to second ring. Mormont signaled horn. "Send messages south," he ordered. "We cannot hold long." Silent nods, fear-set faces. That night, snow glowed blue beneath aurora as walkers gathered beyond ring. Jon wrote 3 letters, to Robb and Ned at Moat Cailin, to Stannis at Dragonstone, to Queen Daenerys Targaryen, wherever winds carry fire. He tied ravens, fingers numbed. Before release he whispered, "Fly faster than winter." East of Yunkai, Daenerys received such a raven at dawn. Half-starved, collapsed on mast of her lead cog. Missive in Westerosi script chilled her. The dead march. Seek dragonfire. She looked to Drogon circling above dunes, wings casting shadows like scythes. She thought of Rhaegar's sad songs, of Lyanna's vanished child rumor, of Aegon perhaps. But winter threatened all. Song of Ice and Fire had 2 verses only if singers endured. She summoned her captains. "Change course," she declared. "Meereen can wait." Jorah frowned. "Across the world?" She nodded. "Across the world." The dragons screamed, eager. In the stone sepulchre of Winterfell's crypts, Bran Stark sat dreaming. In Greenside, he saw a winged shadow-blot sun, a wolf with dragon eyes, a heart tree on fire, a sword of morning gleaming in moonlit snow. He saw his father and brother riding home, and behind them a white wave of death. He woke gasping. Hodor shushed him. Mira Reed placed hand on his arm. "What did you see?" Bran's voice shook. "Everything, and not enough." He reached out through roots like nerves to distant weirwoods. In Moat Cailin, Ned jolted awake from a half-sleep, feeling something call his name with children's breath. He stepped outside into falling snow, looked at direwolf banner flapping. He thought he smelled smoke, philosopher's scent of futures burning. Robb joined him. "Scouts say Tywin camps at Harrenhal again. We march dawn." Ned nodded, but eyes remained north. Robb followed gaze. "Father, what is it?" Ned answered slowly. "The real war." They ordered banners struck. Horns sounded. Wolf packs moved under shifting skies. One path south to seize victory before winter choked roads. Another path north to save all from endless night. Among men, choices fork like lightning. Among legends, they converge. Atop Storm's End's battlements, Aegon and Aemon stood side by side in early light, wind-whipping hair silver and midnight black. Below, Dorne's spearmen lit campfires. The Golden Company drilled. Connington reviewed siege engines repurposed for assault on King's Landing. Aegon placed hand on his younger brother's shoulder. "Will you fight?" Aemon nodded solemn, clutching a wooden practice sword Arthur Dayne had carved. "I will sing first," he said. "Mother told me songs make blades lighter." Aegon smiled, aching. "Your mother sings through you." Far away, Daenerys' fleet angled west. Stannis' ravens sought allies. Jon braced at the wall. Ned and Robb galloped into snows. Cersei bred monsters. Tyrion plotted justice. Bolton schemed. Frey waited with knives, disguised as vows. Above all, the sky darkened, and a red comet, returned after long absence, flared it across winter clouds, tail bleeding sparks. In every corner of the realm eyes lifted. Some in hope, some in dread, some whispering prophecy half-remembered. Fires were ready, ice advanced. The song rose, unresolved chord, yearning for final crash. And in that pause, the world drew breath before the last storm's howl.